Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
шануєм і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. І душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу. І покажем, що ми браття козацького
Where in the world did my map go? Hello, everyone.
Oh, no.
I'm the Enforcer, and welcome back to day 451 of the news. Of course, I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 451 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again, even through the tech difficulties.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And before we even get into the news, I have to go and grab the map, because when I clicked my normal buttons to bring up the map, and of course this screen, it threw the map off. So let me go and get my stream, and let me go click on the link in the description below, and let me go grab my day 451 map. We now have it. Here it is right here. And I can still edit it, I believe. Yes, I can. Okay, so that is good. We are now back and in action. And of course, going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Unfortunately, we did hear the news today that, according to our boy Prigozhin, otherwise known as the Nutsack, the Wagner Unit has captured the city of Bakmut in its entirety. However, I do have to say that we still see a decent amount of videos of Ukrainian forces dated from today that are inside of the city in one form or another, and we also see that the Ukrainians are still pushing the northern and southern flanks, and most likely are about to encircle the forces that just took the few remaining city blocks in the city. We're actually going to be getting right into that news tonight within the city of Bakmut, considering that a lot of people have been talking about this across the entirety of the internet, and it is certainly something of a little bit of a larger note. And so moving on into the now famous video, here is Prigozhin claiming that they have now taken the entirety of the city of Bakmut.
20 мая 23 года, 20.05.2023. Сегодня пополудня в 12 часов полностью был взят Бахмут. Последний участок, так называемой многоэтажки самолета. 224 дня.
So to cut it a little short, pretty much this whole entire 6-minute video is of him giving a speech about how they have taken the city of Bakmut. The interesting thing about this is, however, is that we still have videos of Ukrainian soldiers in there, and while they are claiming that they've taken the city of Bakmut, it still seems that there is a decent holdout, at least as far as Ukrainian forces are concerned, in the city itself. And I also have to remind everyone of something here in a little bit after we get through the videos in the center of the city. And so let me move that to where it should be. And we're now going to be moving on to some of our clips, starting off with the first one, showing Ukrainian forces continuing to fight within the city's perimeter. We hear artillery exploding. And we see the Ukrainian cameraman holding the camera, looking at him and the soldier behind him. And we can see the soldier say, "City of Bakmut in the city trenches." He says it's spring, of course, the spring of this year. We now see him standing up with a squad behind him. And they're now climbing out of the trench. We can, of course, and this is very important to note, we can see entire apartment blocks standing behind him, and it appears that he's also walking towards a apartment block behind the camera. This does show that they are still in a built-up urban area of the city of Bakmut, and that they are holding ground that may not even be accounted for on Deep State UA. We now see him showing us the city behind him on the camera, and we can see they are still in the urban area. We hear gunfight going on.
3 был, да?
He says 3 shells in the same place. 3, right? We now hear a shell explode. Very close nearby.
Все нормально? Куда въебало?
Where did it hit? And then the soldier says here, and he points it out. You hit? No, no. We now see them moving into the building. We now see them running down a gangway and into the streets. And we can see what appeared to have been a destroyed Humvee right there. They are now moving through the city, but once again, it's very important to point out they are moving through the city. They're not outside of it. They are still in it as of today in this clip. We can hear what sounds to be a generator somewhere in the area. And we now see the squad continuing to move on through the rubble. And we now hear someone yelling that they run. And we now see the soldier jogging through the open as another round goes whistling overhead and exploding far in the distance. You hear a guy behind him saying, "Go, go." And we see them continuing to push on. We now hear more artillery shells exploding as the soldiers continue to move on through the city.
Там, де ми вийшли, въебало.
Только что въебал вместо выхода.
And now we can hear that an artillery shell hit the trench that they were in at the start of the video. They're continuing to move on, trying to avoid the artillery and more so outrun it, as the Russians, of course, don't really have as many artillery spotting drones as the Ukrainians, and so at times like these, they largely blindly fire them based off of information given to them by spotters on the field. We now see them moving by another destroyed building and around it. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but once again showing, at least as of today, as far as video footage is coming out today, the Ukrainians are still in the city in one form or another. We're now going to be moving on
is that the only video footage we got? Is that one squad moving throughout the city?
No, we have more video footage. Moving on into our next clip, we can also see a Ukrainian drone capturing continued shelling of the city. And this is a very important thing to note, is that if the supposed Ukrainian forces that are no longer in Bakmhut are not there, and let me make sure this is not time. This is stamped of May of 2023, so it is within this month, and we are assuming that it's from today. If the Ukrainian forces were no longer in Bakmhut, why would the Wagner be shelling the city of Bakmhut, which is what we're seeing right here? And when you see the artillery coming down in a very widespread, it appears to be an MLRS barrage, like normal, like we've seen multiple times at this point through the past week from the Wagner unit. And once again showing that while the Wagner is claiming that they've taken the city, they are still barraging a decent part of it, and showing us by that, I guess, by those means, that there must still be Ukrainian forces in this part of the city for them to continue to be shelling it. This is, however, from what we understand, almost the very edge of the city itself. These apartment buildings here are pretty much where the city ends. It goes on for about 2 more streets below the camera screen, and then it goes into open fields, and more so towards that dirt bike rally track that a lot of people have come to know at this point in the battle. But once again, proving that at least as far as the artillery barrage is concerned today from the Wagner unit, they are still hitting Ukrainian forces that appear to be holding the very edge of the city of Bakmhut. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip that also shows other Ukrainian soldiers still inside of the city. We hear firefights going on, and we can see the soldier showing us his surroundings and a burning window. And this once again shows they are in Bakmhut again, inside the city itself.
Можем поменяться, я там на месяцок поеду по Чили и отдам всю свою ЗПшку. Я даже сверху еще накину.
We now hear shells still flying over.
Ебаные пидорасы, 60-ки, блядь.
You see the soldier doing a little hand signal. He's throwing up them gang signs. So with that's the end of the clip, but once again showing that the 241st Brigade, as of today, as far as that video is concerned, is once again in the city of Bakmhut. Those are all 4 videos that we have that still show either the Wagner Unit attacking Ukrainian forces that appear to be in the city, or videos showing Ukrainian forces are in the city. There are 4 separate clips of it, and considering that the Wagner has not done this, and I would say this would probably be the best proof that they would have that they have taken the city, is taking a cameraman to one of the buildings on the very edge of the city and show, we are here on the city's edge, there are no Ukrainian forces here. They did not do that. They took a video somewhere in this area of the city, which is about a half mile to a mile away from the current front lines, and said that they've taken the city in its entirety. The video footage is not showing that to be the same picture. In fact, it's showing a completely opposite one, where Ukrainian forces are still continuing to hold defensive positions in the very western parts of Bakmhut and are still fighting the Wagner Unit there. We're now going to be moving on into the northern flanks, because while the city of Bakmhut is, I guess you could say, contended right now as to whether the Wagner has completely captured the city itself or not, we can see that on the flanks, as of today, they are still continuing to make advances. Just to make sure that we update this on the Deep State UA map, and now Steam has to tell me that someone's playing a game. That's cool. And so we'll wait for that to pass. Come on. It sadly has not updated yet. Deep State UA has not updated the map as of this moment. However, we do know that the Ukrainians are still making advances here on the northern and southern flanks. We also know at this point that Deep State UA is now the inaccurate map. Our map is not perfectly accurate either, but we do know that Deep State is either lagging behind in their updates, or they're not accurately showing the picture of the battlefield. We do know that Ukrainian forces have taken the town of Klishkivka. That has been confirmed by both Prigozhin and also other pro-Russian propagandists, saying that the Ukrainians have entered that town and pushed Russian forces beyond it. So the Ukrainian front lines in this area extend at least to where the mouse cursor is right here, not over here. And also in the northern area, we continue to see that forces there are advancing, but we do not see that reflected on Deep State UA. And so as far as those advances are going, we're kind of in the dark. But moving on into the video footage that we got of those today, in our first clip from the north, we saw a picture of some Polish volunteers posing with their flag for their volunteer unit as they continue to fight in the northern Bakmhut area and help to push that counteroffensive. I gotta say, these guys are kitted out. I like the little ghillie suits that they got, the little AKs as well, and also the pretty cool flag. Not bad at all. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that little picture and on into our next one, where we saw that 2 Russians were captured today inside of a trench work where the Ukrainians were continuing to push forward. We can see both Russians here with their hands up. This was located somewhere near Bakmhut, and from what we could tell, this is most likely in the northern flank, as right now in the southern flank, it appears that most fighting is occurring within the tree lines. And from what we can see in Bakmhut, the tree lines here in this northern area are a little less than the tree lines we'll find down here. They're much more dense in this area of the front line near Klishkivka and also beyond Klishkivka, where we think that the battlefield has moved for now. And here in the northern area, where we suspect the front lines may be, there are less tree lines for the Russians to work with, and so they rely more so on trenches in the wide open. And we can see that they took another 2 Russian prisoners right here. With that, we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on into the next one near Dubovo-Vasilievka, where we saw a Russian prisoner telling his story. Now, I would like to give credit to the YouTube channel that this video is from, Ivan Doan, who made the audio translation of the soldier. I could not find the clip of the actual soldier talking, and so it's a great thing that we have this translation, otherwise we wouldn't know what this Russian soldier is saying. And so, to make sure to give credit where credit's due, make sure to drop over to Ivan Doan's channel and subscribe to him, because he was the one who did this translating work. And so with that, here's the clip.
My name is Kazantsev Igor Vladimirovich. I was taken prisoner because of my stupidity. We were sitting drinking with mujiks. We drank like 3 liters of moonshine. And then I decided to bring 1 bottle to a guy from my village. But of course nobody explained to us our positions. They would just point with their hand, like it's there, it's here. So I looked and looked and looked and I didn't find him. I don't see anybody, I don't hear anybody, so I go back. And then I see guys and they say, come over here. And I'm so glad I think I will ask them. And then I realize it's not our guys and they say, come here, dear friend, come over here. So, that's how I was taken prisoner.
And so that's his story.
And top-notch voiceover work, by the way.
And that was top-notch voice work. That's why I want to give credit to Ivan Doan, because he did great translating that prisoner's story. And there it is right there. Once again, Russian alcoholics being captured on the front lines because they're drinking too much booze. And I guess you could say it's a little bit of a boozy story. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on towards Yehidne, where we saw once again the Ukrainians conducting a successful counterattack on film in the northern area. This is more of a montage of video clips that we assume are in the Yehidne and Berkivka area, showing Ukrainian forces moving through the village. We can also see them really skirting towards the very outskirts of Bakmhut city, also showing that the Russians' control of the very outskirts on the northwestern side is not absolute, as Ukrainian forces are still pushing through that area and using it as a bit of a perimeter. We now see them running forward with an AT-4 and firing it into the distance. Boom. And we see it flying over there and exploding. We can now see the soldier running back, and that's the end of the clip. But once again showing that Ukrainian forces in this area of the front line continue to push right through the Yehidne area, and also are running into some of the buildings here in the northwestern part of the city. We're now going to be moving on from the northern flank and on into the southern flank near Klishkivka. Starting off with our first clip a little bit further behind the line, where we saw a captured armored car. This is a Russian armored car of the AMN 590951 variant, a very long name for what largely appears to be an up-armored Tiger armored car. This is one of the only examples that have been captured by the Ukrainians. Only 2 of them have been captured, and the only other one was from Kherson in October of 2022. A very rare vehicle as far as Ukrainian captures go, and great to see that the Ukrainians were able to nab themselves another one of these while the Russians were retreating here in the southern front. We believe that this one was actually abandoned by Russian forces, and that's how they got their hands on it, so very nice to see. With that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on into the front line near Klishkivka itself, where we saw Russian forces continuing to be destroyed by Ukrainian forces. We can see the Russians here in the tree line, and we already know that this is a bit of a mistake on their end. And we can now see the tree line exploding and little pieces of confetti going up into the air, showing us that these forces are no longer around. We can see the soldiers sitting by the railroad tracks. And I'd also like to show y'all something interesting here. This is a video that was taken near the railroad tracks in the southern Bakmhut area. And if we look at these, and you can see they are double-tracked like the ones in the video, they are all beyond Klishkivka. Like, the only time that it gets close to just being parallel to Klishkivka is on its final 2.5-mile stretch into Bakmhut. The rest of them are about 1.5 miles away from Klishkivka. And so once again, this is very good proof as far as video evidence goes that Russian front lines have moved on to the railroad tracks themselves, and that appears to be where the Russians are making their stand in this part of the front line. And that is, in video evidence, our best proof of their front line having truly moved beyond Klishkivka is this clip of Russian defensive fortifications, fully manned by the way, on that railroad track. And so we're going to allow the video to continue, and we can see that they're continuing to drop bomblets on the Russian lines here. And grenades as well. We see them dropping another F1 grenade, this time right near an outpost, exploding right nearby, and we can now see Russian forces moving around ever so carefully, trying to not get themselves found. Unfortunately for that guy, he's going to be getting the nail bomb. Very unfortunate.
Unfortunate indeed.
I guess you could say he got nailed.
You could say that.
Just a giant, like, 12-inch long nail sticks out of the front of that thing. And we see that the bombletting continues. They're still wiping out Russian forces near the railroad tracks. And we can see them continuing to hit the small foxholes that have been set up on that side of the railroad. You can now see some Russians moving around in the bush, and the Ukrainians are about to turn this into the famous burning bush, right there. And now we can see them dropping a bomblet right onto the railroad tracks themselves, where a small fortification has been made, and the grenade exploded right nearby to that soldier, most likely causing him to have a very unfun day. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and we're now moving on into our next one from the Southern Front, I believe our last one actually, showing a BTR-4 of the Ukrainian Armed Forces was actually lost today in one of the pushes. Now, one thing I will say is that we usually do not show Ukrainian losses on this channel. We have Ukrainian soldiers that watch this channel, and we also have people in Ukraine itself, not in incredibly large numbers, but they still watch it nonetheless, and whether it be live or not, we usually want to taper our showing of Ukrainian losses as best as possible, because that's a very sensitive thing for Ukrainians and Ukrainian soldiers alike, considering that those are their citizens and comrades in arms. I thought I would show this one today because while the Ukrainians have been making absolutely landfall amounts of progress here in the Southern Front, it is not without loss. And that's one very important thing to remember, is that Ukrainian soldiers are not brave because there is nothing to fear from the Russians. They are brave because they face down death each and every day and continue to liberate ground and land of the Ukrainians' country, and also continue to face down the Russian forces that, while incredibly incompetent, are also deadly to a small degree. And so here is a video of one BTR-4 that was hit during a push in the southern flank. We believe that this BTR-4 was also a part of the 3rd Armored Brigade, otherwise known as the Azov, and we can see the vehicle being hit right there. The other vehicle further up the line appears to have not been hit and had already unloaded its infantry. We can now see the smoking BTR-4 unloading its infantry from the back as they clamber out of the back as the vehicle starts smoking, and it does appear that it may be going to brew up soon. We can see the crew also bailing out as well. We can see some guys climbing out of the driver's position and commander's position as the soldiers try and, I guess you could say, organize themselves near the rear of the vehicle. We can now see some soldiers running back to help out the others that appear to not be making it too far, maybe from wounds. And we can see this guy help one other to climb out. And we can see what appears to be a few wounded Ukrainian soldiers near the back of the BTR. We can now see the BTR being hit by a second ATGM, this time from the rear near the open door, and we can now see that the ammunition is starting to burn inside the BTR-4, and unfortunately some of those Ukrainian soldiers may have been lost in that ATGM strike. The vehicle is now smoking heavily and will most likely be brewing up soon, and we can now see this from a what may be a Russian drone's view. As we can see later on, the BTR did burn down completely. And that's the end of the clip, but once again showing some of the dangers that Ukrainian forces deal with day in day. I always make the war a very positive thing, at least as far as our outlook. But under our positivity, every single day, Ukrainian forces deal with great amounts of danger. And one of the most dangerous things to do in a war is to conduct an offensive. And offensives lead to inevitable losses like that. Thankfully, the Ukrainians are far greater trained than the Russian counterparts, and so that gives them a massive advantage in making sure to mitigate those losses. But losses like that still happen. And I think it's very important to show that stuff every once in a while to remind everyone around the world, not just here in the United States, but everyone else in Europe, Asia, I guess you could say the Indian subcontinent, Africa, South America, and all of those places. It's very important to show everyone around the world that the Ukrainians do not always have a cakewalk, and this was why it's important to support nonprofits, charities, United 24, and other things, because soldiers do get wounded, especially on the Ukrainian side, and they require medical care as well. And so I think it's very important to always point out that while we keep a positive outlook on this channel, it's always important to remember the bravery of these soldiers and their courage to face down danger like this each and every day to continue to push forward and liberate their land. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip just south of Klishkivka and on down into a clip that we can kind of associate with the Bakmhut front, although it was a little bit out of the way, just south of Ozhryaniivka, where we saw a Russian BMP being hit. And so with that, here's the clip. Also, we're going to have to mute that. But we can see them pointing out the Russian BMP. We can see the 28th Brigade lining up for a shot. We can also see some electronic warfare systems they mounted onto some posts. And we can now see the FPV drones coming in to do the Lord's work. We can see the first one slamming nearby to the BMP. It appears to have missed it for the large part. We can see this one, though, hitting directly onto the electric warfare system. We see this one also doing the same. And we now see even more explosions occurring throughout the rest of the front line. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, but a huge credit to the 28th Brigade for continuing to knock out Russian forces throughout the area in between Kurtimivka and Orlivka. And so with that, it's now time for us, and we rarely ever do this now, but we'll do it tonight. It's now time for us to go into a frontline analysis of what Bakmut is looking like and most likely what we'll be seeing over the coming weeks. We largely can confirm that while the Ukrainians do hold parts of the city, they do not hold a large part of it any longer. And so we're going to adjust the front lines to look about what we think it is today. So let me make sure to try and line it up just right. So about right here. Let me clip those two together. And so if we had to take a good guess of what the front line looks like, it looks most likely, and also let me move them into Yehidne since they are up there, and also let me move this up about right there. And also let me do this because they are still near Dubovo-Vasilivka, and they also made a decent push out towards Zelenovsky. And then we'll move this down to try and make the front lines as accurate as we understand it. This is what the front lines around Bakmut most likely look like at the moment. Of course, we would work off of Deep State UA, but throughout multiple days at this point, really weeks, they've proven to be a inaccurate map. It's most likely for operational security reasons, so I'm not trying to like bash their map system or anything. It is a great map system. It's been reliable throughout most of the war. It's just that, however, right now they are taking time to update it, showing the day-to-day occurrences. We do know, and we can confirm that Ukrainian forces have made these kinds of advances here in the Klishchiivka area, or in the southern front direction, and they've once again secured the ridge line that the railroad tracks pretty much run in front of, and they will keep control of those, allowing them a larger range of fire over Russian forces than Russian forces will have on Ukrainian ones. However, in Bakmut, we do know that the Ukrainians hold right now the motor park area and also the MiG monument. We can confirm that. We cannot confirm what who really holds this area right here, which is the built-up area. That is kind of in question for me. Ukrainian forces did hold this built-up area as of a few days ago, and we still see video clips coming out of that general area, so they may still hold that right now, although that is contested, considering that Deep State UA did make a deliberate update just a few days ago, and I'll show you all that, showing that the Wagner unit was able to take that area, but at the same time, we're not exactly sure because video footage is still coming out from that area, and that may prove that Ukrainians still hold that line, and Deep State may have been a little bit too hasty in making that map change. So that part is contested. Meanwhile, on the northern flank, while we know that Ukrainian forces have been making progress, and they did start from around the 0506 highway around this area, and we know that they've made it into Yehidne and are also starting to fight in the area of Berkivka and Dubovo-Vasilivka, a lot less about the northern flank is known than the southern flank, so we don't know the exact amounts of progress up there. I don't think anyone really does, except for Ukrainian and Russian commanders that are on the field. But this is what it's most likely looking like. If we were to go off of this, we can see that as the Ukrainians continue to sweep around the flanks, we can see that it's almost in a pendulum motion, using Bakmut as the center of the pendulum, where the forces are sweeping from Ivanivsky round in almost a circle towards Ilovaisk. The Wagner is still pushing forward in Bakmut. Going off of that, we can make a pretty fair assumption that the Wagner unit will most likely have to dedicate a decent amount of forces into Bakmut to continue to try and hold the center, and this is really going to start to limit what they can do on the flanks to stop the Ukrainians from pushing around. We already know that the Wagner is lightly supporting the 72nd Brigade here in the southern area of Bakmut, but that doesn't appear to be doing much. The Wagner units appear to also I guess you could say they're also being overrun at the exact same rate as the 72nd Brigade, and so this will most likely become a slow push that pushes the Russians and also the Wagner over the T-05013 highway and towards the small hill ridge that we saw near Zaitsevo and Vershnia almost 225 days ago when this battle started and the Russians were fighting there. Also, going off of what we're seeing in the northern flank, it appears that Ukrainian forces are actually trying to punch through and up into the Krasnoora-Solidar area, not getting into the exact details there, but that does appear to be what they're doing. And so if they're able to pull both of those off, they relegate the Russians once again down to only the M03 highway, and they'll also be threatening the center line in the city itself with encirclement, most likely forcing the Wagner to either withdraw from the city after they've taken the entirety of it, or hold still and wait for the Ukrainians to completely encircle the city, or largely encircle encircle it to the point that they can no longer retreat, and then a siege will begin, which will most likely be incredibly devastating to the Wagner unit. There's no way it could be more devastating to Bakmut. The city has been completely destroyed at this point, and that is what we're largely looking at right now on this front line. And so while Prigozhin may have been able to possibly claim a propaganda victory for the Russians today, even in just the frontline strategic situation right now, it's not looking good for them. That may have actually been rather stupid to do, considering that the Ukrainians are pushing around the flanks, and it looks like it won't be long before those gains were completely worthwhile. On top of that, I would like to remind everyone else of another big thing. It took them 225 days to take Bakmut since the start of this battle. That's 225 days. If we were to divide that down into 30, saying that each month is 30 days, which isn't exactly true, but 250 days divided by 30, it means that it took them 8 months and about 10 days to take the city of Bakmut. 8 months and 10 days. And they're acting like this is a victory. And look how small the city of Bakmut is. Konstantinivka is a similar size to Bakmut. And when you zoom out and look at the entirety of the map of Ukraine, Bakmut and Konstantinivka aren't even blips on the map for the most part. They may as well not even exist compared to the size of Ukraine and the other cities that are around that are even larger than Bakmut or Konstantinivka. This area doesn't even serve a logistical purpose for the Russians either, and we've been saying that since 8 months ago when this battle started. The only reason that we can see that the Wagner unit, or the Russians for that matter, would want to take Bakmut is because it was the closest thing to the lines. It was just a few miles away, it was the largest city, and therefore it could have been a quick propaganda win. However, it took them 7 months to take it, and they've also lost around 30,000 Wagner soldiers, even by Prigozhin's count, which we would assume would be a little bit lower than the realistic figure. And so it's not really a victory by any means, and even still, while they are able to claim that they may control most of the buildings or all of the buildings within Bakhmut city, they have lost complete control of the flanks, and it'll only be a matter of time because of that before they lose the city again. So it was practically pointless from the start, and it doesn't really look like they're going to be making much progress beyond this. And so with that, I hope we covered the Bakhmut front as best we could, and we're now going to be moving on into the Russian news and then the location unknown news. But before we get into all of that, we have some pretty impressive polls, and I want to make sure we cover them. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, it is now time for the polls, and our very first one says, Russia claims that Bakhmut has been completely taken, and Ukraine denies. And what are your thoughts? 35% said Bakhmut is not yet lost. 29% said Ukraine barely holds some of it. 11% said unsure, and 25% said Bakhmut is sadly lost. And on this one, I'm going to actually fall within the 29%. I think that based on the footage we've seen, it appears that only small squads of soldiers are left in Bakmut around the outskirts of the city. And to me, that wouldn't constitute holding the city. But like the enforcer said, Bakmut was really never significant, so it's not like it's a major loss. To Russia, it will obviously be claimed as a symbolic victory, but in actuality, it really equates to nothing. But enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it is hardly a symbolic victory. It's hardly a victory at all. It was supposed to be just a quick little land grab at the beginning of this offensive where they could say that they won something, but it's 8 months and 10 days later, and they only have a destroyed city that was home to 70,000 people to show for it, and they hardly even have that. They may lose that in a few weeks. So I would say that the Ukrainians still hold a small part of the city. They're not completely pushed out yet, like the Russians would want people to believe, and I think that that will most likely remain the case until the Ukrainians retake the city, and then we'll see the Russians saying the exact same thing that we're saying right now. Up until now, they made this sound like if they took that city, they would win the war, and if they lose it due to Ukrainian counterattack around the flanks, they'll then probably be saying, oh, it was never an important city in the first place. It wasn't even worthwhile, although they wasted 8 months and around 30,000 guys fighting for that city. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our second poll says, if Bakhmut has fallen, will this negatively impact Ukrainian morale, or will it remain consistent? It looks like 79% said it won't affect Ukrainian morale, 4% said unsure, 13% said, it might to some degree, and 4% said it will impact Ukraine in a negative way. And I'm going to fall within the 13%. I think it will slightly impact the morale, but of course, it won't take down Ukraine's fighting spirit, because Ukraine has some of the most fierce and dedicated fighters I have ever seen anywhere in the world, and I doubt that losing Bakhmut is going to impact them in any really bad way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's most likely not going to impact Ukraine in any significant way. I think it wouldn't be that much of a propaganda loss. However, one thing I do have to say is that nobody on YouTube has really helped. I'll just say that, as a general blanket statement. Oh, and of course, that's not every YouTuber who covers the Ukraine war, it's just some of them. Some YouTubers have not really helped with public perception about the importance of Bakhmut, and a lot of YouTubers overplayed the importance of Bakhmut strategically, so that way people would watch their channel, kind of like mainstream news does, so that way people think it's a truly important city. And Bakmhut has never been important by any means. You can go back to the beginning of the battle nearly 8 months ago, and you'll hear us saying from the start, I don't know why they would attack there, because it's one of the most unimportant cities, and to make a big deal about it doesn't make any sense. Beyond some people out there making Bakhmut a far bigger deal than it is, there is really nothing of significance that has been lost in Bakhmut. Now, if Slovyansk or Kramatorsk was lost, that would be something of significance. But there isn't anything of significance in Bakhmut to really make a point about, or a point of freaking out about. So, in my honest opinion, I would say it's probably not that big of a propaganda loss. It isn't even to me. One thing that makes me a little shaky talking about it, though, is knowing that so many people out there put this ill-founded faith on Bakhmut being an important city as far as the war is concerned. And that's something that I never really subscribed to, I never really believed in. And now that the Wagner is possibly claiming that they control all of Bakhmut, now I feel like I'm having to walk on eggshells because of what other people wanted to say, so that way they could draw in viewers, hopefully, because they wanted Bakmhut to sound far more important as a strategic site than it ever would be. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll says, Russia says that providing F-16s to Ukraine carries a colossal risk to the West, and what are your thoughts? And man, have we heard a statement like that before, anytime from Russia? Sounds like a broken record, if you ask me. Looks like 80% said it's Russia's usual red line tactic, 4% said unsure, 13% said they are worried but won't act, and 2% said Russia is being serious this time. And if this isn't the boy that cried wolf scenario by the textbook definition, I don't know what is. I think it's their usual red line tactic. They're just running their mouths once again. Nothing will come of it. And even if something was to come of it, what are they going to do? Absolutely nothing. They're going to keep running their mouth. But, Enforcer, what say you?
What happened? Reread the line.
Reread the poll?
Reread the line.
Russia says that providing F-16s to Ukraine carries a colossal risk to the West. And thoughts?
Fighter jets to Ukraine can be described in one word. But to answer that, but they can blow smoke up the rear end at this point, because haven't they said that about everything and then nothing ever happened? I don't even care what they have to say anymore. There's nothing they're going to do about it. They're just running their mouths again, and there's going to be no disastrous consequences. When we first started sanctioning them, they said that economic sanctions are as the same as outright warfare, and guess what? They cried about it, and then everyone moved on. That's what they're going to do right here as well, and this is nothing more than puffery from the Russian diplomats trying to make it sound like they're going to do something, but the best thing they can do is maybe, I don't know, turn on a light bulb by burning like 30 tons of coal. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we are fresh out of polls, so we're moving on to our Super Chat questions, and up first, we have a $110 donation from guess who? None other than Mark, Colonel of the LSA. He's still Colonel. Mark, you're due for a promotion now. but thank you very much, Mark, for the support. He says, Jaga Jaga. The Russian self-esteem will be popped by Ukraine F-16.
And I thank you so much for the mass amount of support, Mark, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you seriously do help this thing to keep on rolling day in and day out. And if it wasn't for folks like you, this channel wouldn't be possible. Even on days where people think it's bad news. But honestly, this has been seen for months at this point. But people are still out there going, But anyways, I do thank you so much for the support, Mark. And chugga chugga. And hopefully, Russian self-esteem will be destroyed by the F-16 because they think the Storm Shadow's doing work to them, which they kind of do at this point. Wait until they see what an F-16 will do to them. They'll be able to fire off any kind of Western ordnance that it can carry here in America, or anywhere else for that matter. And so with that, thank you so much, Colonel, once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you do make it possible for us to run this stream day in and day out. And I thank you so much for supporting us once again, so that we can make sure to get this news on out here and appreciating this channel enough that you find it worthwhile to support. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
All right, and our next super chat is from White Lightning 777, who puts in an $8 donation, and thank you very much for the support. And he says, which costs more, one ATACMS or one Storm Shadow? And I mean both the missile itself and the entire launching process.
And can you reread that question again to make sure I get it correct?
Which costs more, one ATACMS or one Storm Shadow? I mean both the missile itself and the entire launching process.
The ATACMS or the Storm Shadow? The Storm Shadow will always take precedent in cost over an ATACMS if we're including the launch vehicle, because a Storm Shadow must always be launched from the air, from what we understand, and any aircraft will always outcost a ground MLRS like a HIMARS, because a HIMARS only costs around $5 million. Even a MiG-29 can cost somewhere around $30 million, even a used one. So I hope that does answer that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because just by the launch system alone, be it aircraft or MLRS, the Storm Shadow would win just because it has to have an aircraft to be used. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. We are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Russian news, the location unknown news, and every other news except for the Bakmhut news.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than John Webster. And thank you very much, John, for the support. He says the LSA was representing on Ukraine Matters stream today, led by the General Mark himself. Wink, wink. Also, Disneyland's food is dope. Eat it when they tell you to eat it.
Thank you so much for the support, John Webster. And then it's really cool to know that the LSA reps the set everywhere the LSA goes. I think that's great, and it's always great to know that we have incredible folks like Mark at the helm of such things and making sure that the LSA is represented, hopefully well, because I do know of one specific place where the LSA is actually hated. One specific place. And it's a whole story. I'm not even going into it because I'm over it at this point. But still, it's great to hear that the LSA makes its way around the whole of the internet, of course, repping the set and continuing to support Ukraine. And it's great to know that Mark was the one who was leading the charge over there on Ukraine Matters channel. And I hope that they enjoyed seeing the LSA over there. I would have to say, I disagree with you there. I don't know about Disneyland's food, but I know about Disney World's food, because that's like the East Coast version of Disneyland. It is far larger, and the food is far worse, I would assume. Let me take you all to Disney World real quick. I know this is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but this is in address to the Super Chat. So let me make sure to go down here to the Magic Kingdom, where I remember the most atrocious food being served. So let me go here. Let me see if I'll find a picture of food. And let me scroll through. And I'll try and find y'all a picture of some food. I gotta tell y'all though, nobody does theming like Disney parks do theming. Disney always hits the nail as far as theme park theming goes. You won't see buildings like that, or at least facades like that. Everyone knows that that's not the real Haunted Mansion. The real Haunted Mansion looks like a Walmart built onto this building here. But it's still amazing to see what kind of stuff they have at Disney. But if I can find the freaking food, I'd be greatly appreciative. You know what? Let's just go find a restaurant here, and then I'll show y'all from there. So, here we go. Pinocchio's Village House. We'll go here, and I'll show y'all the food from here. Oh my god. They've finally done something to It's a Small World. They changed it a little.
I thought I heard they shut this thing down.
I wish they would. We're about to cause a civil war. But that's the food. This looks like a school lunch, and that's not saying anything good at all, especially here in America. Like,
this probably cost $100 for this platter.
$100 at least. I mean, like, look at this stuff. That pizza, eh. The fries, eh. And the wings, I mean, where did those come from? Like a lab? Like, I'm telling you, like, in my honest opinion, Disney food is not that great. And I know some of y'all are about to say, well, yeah, it's not great there, but it's great in other places. My thing is, though, is that wherever you eat in Disney, it ought to be as good as the rides are, and it just never is. This stuff blocks you up. I mean, you're talking about, like, the Russians controlling the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and that possibly becoming a nuclear meltdown situation. Every time you eat food at Disney World, it feels like there's a nuclear meltdown situation going on in the restroom hours later. I'm honest. I got to be honest with you. I thank you so much once again for the support, John, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I agree with you. Well, I thank you so much for being over there on Ukraine Matters channel today and repping this out in the LSA. But I absolutely hate Disney food. I love Disney rides, though. I'll tell you that. They don't have bad rides. They hit the spot every time. Like, my favorite one, actually, is at the Animal Kingdom. Actually, that's my favorite park, believe it or not. And the best ride they have there is the Kali River Rapids. That is an amazing ride. I love that ride. Like, to death. It's a great one. And then, of course, Expedition Everest. Who can dislike that? It's a good roller coaster. As far as roller coasters go, it wasn't that bad. But make sure to avoid the food. Like Animal Kingdom actually doesn't have that bad of food. Their food's probably one of the best as well throughout all the Disney World parks, but avoid Magic Kingdom food, or resort food for that matter, because I'm just not a fan of it. Like, at least that's my opinion on it. But still,
the food in Epcot's pretty good though. If you go to the like
German
cultural little things, yeah, like the German one, they have pretty good food. The bratwurst is pretty good, but even at that, it's still not what you'd call gourmet.
Yeah, here we go. Here's Epcot. And I gotta be honest with you, man, I got so many complaints. Like, why the hell did they replace Nordstrom with Frozen Ever After, man? That was Maelstrom, I mean. That was our favorite ride at Epcot. Like, you know, like, you remember that, Matthew? It, like, told you the history of Norway through, like, the myths and stuff. I mean, that was so cool. And then they replaced it with Frozen Ever After. I get it, but I don't really like that, you know, they replaced such a neat and unique ride with an IP. That was kind of lame. I'm really getting into the rabbit hole here of Disney stuff, and this is your Ukraine War channel. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, John Webster, in helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope I addressed that fairly well. And also, while I get really militant about Disney food, please understand, it's perfectly fine if you like it. Everyone has their own tastes. I'm not, like, bashing anyone who likes Disney food. It's just that it's not for me, and it's never agreed with me. Taco Bell, on the other hand, does, so I'm kind of a little bit different like that. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and it's now time for us to move on from this question. Oh.
Before you move on from this question segment, I have a poll running that we have to address right now. Should Mark be promoted to general? 82%, an overwhelming majority, said yes, and only 18% said no. So, Mark is getting a promotion.
How do we do that? We can't change his name. I'm sitting here like, man, I wish we could. We've been trying to promote, in case if anyone's coming in who doesn't know the story, Mark was the general of the LSA for a good bit, and then he demoted himself to private, and then he moved back up to colonel, and we haven't been able to budge him from colonel ever since. We've been trying to each and every night. We just got almost 1,000 votes right there, and it's all almost 81%. For him being promoted to general. He's got to become a general. He's got to be. And now he says, don't worry, I'll be busted to PFC soon. No, wrong way. Go up. Go up to general. Don't go down. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. Mark has got to promote himself to general. It's got to give at some point. And hopefully tomorrow during the Sunday fundraiser, we'll see that he got promoted all the way up to general. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on back into the news and on into the area of Saratov. I just put this marker into this general area, but some soldiers in Russia had to thank the citizenry for getting them some camouflage nets for the war. Now, of course, the Ukrainians have made camouflage nets, and a lot of the citizenry took that up as a job to make sure that the Ukrainians are able to camouflage their artillery systems better. However, one always has to remember, the Ukrainians never said that they were the second best army in the world. The Russians, on the other hand, did, and they're having to thank the citizenry for making camouflage nets because the Russian army was not going to provide it to them. Hello, dear compatriots. Special words of gratitude I would like to say to the women of the Mountain Altai for the provided masking nets, which, as you can see, we apply on direct exposure, like it's sunburn or something. We mask our equipment and our positions. Thank you for not forgetting. We feel your support even away from home. We will not stand for the price. Victory will be ours. Not with that crappy paint job you put on that PKP. What the hell is that supposed to be? Like chunky vomit? Like that is the ugliest paint job I've ever seen on a PKP. But anyways, we can see once again, the second best army in the world is having to ask the citizenry for support. Meanwhile, in Belgorod, things are apparently falling apart over here, and now the Russian citizenry are making videos appealing to the Russian government to get weapons from them because they feel like the Russian military isn't protecting them anymore. And so, boo-hoo, and here's the clip. Also, I have to mute it, well, turn it down a little bit because this guy is like busting out the eardrums of the Russians nearby. And so here's the clip. We, residents of the front Belgorod, appeal to our authorities. Our city and region have long since ceased to be protected. Every day, the Belgorodians are under fire from the side of the Ukrainian armed forces. Our fellow citizens are dying. Our objects, critical structures are being destroyed. We fully realize that the pre-trial status of our troops will not help fully protect us. After all, the front line is huge. Without any complaints, we asked our governor, as well as the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Belgorod city, to locate us with firearms to protect the city. We are ordinary citizens. We are not professional military, but our patriotism and the strength of the Russian spirit will allow us to keep the city from an offensive in the southwest. These jerks were able to keep Kyiv when they were given machine guns. In the same way, we'll be able to keep Belgorod. If you give us weapons, we are ready to become a people's team that we will defend the peace and tranquility of Belgorod from the oncoming forces in the southwest. The governor, hear us and give us weapons. We'll show our strength. The enemy will not pass. The victory will be ours. Dang, if this guy talked any faster, man, I feel like I'd have a stroke from just trying to keep up with him.
I think it's sped up, though.
I don't know. I think it actually may be or isn't, because he's also moving like a gremlin. Like, just muting it and looking at his body language. Look at this, man. Yeah, it's got to be sped up, because he is moving like a gremlin, man. Like, dang.
That guy in the back over there to the left with the blue hat's moving his mouth around like a crack addict.
Dude, you know what he looks like? He looks like he's about to say, "Hell, boy, they're gonna steamroll us dry." That's what he looks. That's what he looks like he's about to say, man. Honestly, he looks like Larry the Cable Guy.
Oh no, that's an insult, man. Don't
oh, come on.
Don't call Larry the Cable Guy like that.
Listen, I'm just saying it's a little uncanny. That's all I'm saying. And also, we got the reject for the, what the hell is it, Matthew? That toilet paper with a lumberjack on it. This is the reject ad idea that they had the first time, and they said, he looks too goofy. Change him out with someone with a beard. And then they threw this guy aside and got the other one. But very interesting to see that, at least is according to this video, these group of Belgorodians don't believe that the Russian military is defending them anymore. And now they're asking kind of for the same thing that happened in Kyiv, where they just are given guns and they're allowed to run around the streets. Now, I would say that that's a pretty interesting idea, especially considering that the Ukrainians aren't pushing into Belgorod. And I think this may be a play from this guy just because he wants a free AK and he wants to see how long he can keep one before the Russians come and get it from him again. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from the news in Belgorod and also the Russian news in general. So that's all we had from the area today. And we're now going to be moving on into our location unknown, starting off with our first clip of some Ukrainian tanks moving through the night. Okay, that's a sea shanty. I was wondering what that was. Also, ring, bang, bang. But anyways, also we got an answer as to what...
The Irish have showed up to fight.
Also, we got an answer, Matthew, from Donna Olson about what the toilet paper brand is. It's Brawny.
Brawny. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, the lumberjack guy? Oh, man. With my double-bladed axe and my hobnailed boots, I go where the timber's tall. But we can see the tanks continuing to move on through the night. We can see one just threw up, like, a piece of dirt or pavement or something. And we see every once in a while they're flashing the little, I don't know what the hell it's supposed to be, like it's a night vision spotlight, an IR spotlight, something like that. They're built onto a good amount of Russian tanks. And we can also see down there the tracks are sparking along the pavement. We can now see the tanks ushering this vehicle to move on by. This may actually be a car. We can now see it moving on up behind the next tank. And it appears that we have a BMW right here, y'all, because this thing is tailgating. We can now see it. Yeah, we can see it flashing its lights. That's what that is. It's not an IR spotlight. this guy is flashing his lights at tanks. This is truly a Beamer moment. We can see him flashing lights again. And the tank crew are like, we got a Beamer driver. And right now the guy in the car is going, bam, bam, get off the road. They're like, oh, God. Man, they better watch out, man. Beamer drivers are a weapon, even to tanks. And when you see the track still sparking, this tank is not moving over for this guy to pass. Actually, it's hogging the road, and that Beamer driver is going, bam, bam, get off the road, learn how to drive. What are you driving, a tank? You think this is tough? But anyways, we're moving on from that clip and on to the next one, where we also saw that life goes on. Some of y'all may actually remember this scene from a really long time ago. This is from a whole year ago. Well, actually, the picture was taken just recently, about a few days ago. But this scene was from a long time ago, and many of y'all may remember it as one of the first pictures shown during the snowy months in 2022, at the very beginning of the war, where a Russian tank was destroyed, the turret went flying, it had a turret toss, and the turret landed right over here. This picture was famous at the time, and the entire area was covered in snow. And now we can see in 2023, life goes on, and the farmers went right out to this field where this tank still sits to this day, tilled the ground. We can even see one guy going out of his way to till the little triangular shaped section in between the turret and the hull, and they're continuing on their farming. Nothing's going to stop the Ukrainian farmers from continuing to plant their crops and grow them as well, and not even this tank is going to get in their way. And it's pretty wild to see that truly, like the caption says on this picture, a life goes on even with the remains of war around them. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that interesting little picture and on to our next little bit, where we saw that according to the British Ministry of Defense, and I had to get this report today because it is quite interesting. I have a feeling that the Ministry of Defense is basing some of these statements off of satellite footage that they're receiving and not showing to the public, that the Russians have committed almost some of the last of their reserves. They are down to battalion-level reserves along the entirety of the front lines. And this is what the Ministry of Defense report says. In the last 4 days, Russia has highly likely redeployed up to several battalions to reinforce the Bakmhut sector. This follows Ukrainian tactical gains on the flanks of the contested Donetsk Oblast town through mid-May and publicly aired doubts about the commitment of Wagner Group forces to continue fighting in the sector. With Russia likely maintaining relatively few uncommitted combat units in Ukraine, the redeployment represents a notable commitment by the Russian command. Russia's leadership likely continues to see capturing Bakmut as the key immediate war aim, which would allow them to claim some degree of success in the conflict. While I butcher that last word,
Success.
Suck. I sat there and said suck and cess. Like, it wasn't even the same word. But anyways, as we can see right here, the Ministry of Defense has gotten some information. Now, I'm assuming it's most likely satellite information showing the redeployment of these battalions that were in the strategic reserve, and they've now been moved to the front lines to fight in Bakmut. This is very important, and some of y'all may be realizing this. They have no reserves at this point, maybe even just a few battalions for the entirety of the front line. If the Ukrainians conduct a counteroffensive elsewhere at this moment, the Russians have absolutely no reserves to race forward to try and stop the hemorrhage of the loss that offensive will turn into for them. And if they wanted to try and pull units to stop the Ukrainian push, they would have to pull those units off of active parts of the front line, like Bakmut, meaning they would lose Bakmut, or they would lose, or they would just continue to lose the land that the Ukrainians would be taking in the counteroffensive, and they would hold Bakmut. But this is a very interesting point, maybe even a linchpin point that the Ukrainians have been looking for to start giving the green light for their offensive to actually go underway. Because the Russians have no reserves to stop a Ukrainian push with at this point. All of those have now been moved to Bakmut. And so this is a very interesting report and has a lot of implications as far as the strategic side of things are going in this war. With that, we're now going to be moving on into our last bit of Location Unknown news, where we saw the Russian casualty report for the day. And oh, buddy, it was good.
Oh, they got 4.
4 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. Ender Slayer throwing in a flipped over Bobcat. 10 Varus throwing in a burning Bobcat. KJ throwing in another burning Bobcat. MMMOR throwing in another burning Bobcat. Yogi, oh wait, that's not a Bobcat. That's a freaking car. but it's absolutely insane. Another 4 Bobcats destroyed. And I gotta say, hey, not bad. Moving on from that, the losses were pretty high in every category except for the APC category. So let's go through them and let's break it down number by number. 670 Russian soldiers have been lost over the past 24 hours. That is quite a decent number, and only about 130 soldiers short of an entire battalion tactical group being destroyed across the front lines. I gotta say, I love to see it. We also saw that 5 armored personnel carriers were destroyed today as well, a little bit below average by about 6 or 7, but great to see that they were able to destroy another 5 armored personnel carriers. Now, excuse me, it's time for me to start getting hype again because the rest of these numbers are a straight up juice, and so... They lost 20 supply vehicles! 8 tons of supplies each! That's 180 tons! Or as heavy as your mom! 4 tanks were lost! It's a good number, a great day. An average number of tanks lost, that means they're suffering. 19 artillery systems destroyed, a great number, because that means that nearly 5 artillery batteries were destroyed in 24 hours. They're getting absolutely hammered and not with vodka. And speaking of not with vodka, their drones are getting shot down in a decent amount. 32 drones shot down in 24 hours. That's more than 1 an hour. We're talking about massive breakneck progress. And on top of it all, 6 anti-aircraft warfare systems absolutely schmacked. That means that $90 million of anti-aircraft losses were taken in 24 hours. And I gotta say, this is absolutely impressive, honestly worth the hype. And I gotta say, it's great to see that the Ukrainians are inflicting massive amounts of losses to Russian forces all across the lines. And I would actually assume that with these kinds of losses, the Russians are going to be running on air defense, at least in Ukraine, and they're going to have to redivert air defenses that have been stationed in other areas, like around Putin's mansion, Moscow, and St. Petersburg, into Ukraine to try and account for those losses. So, I have to say...
Damn, son, could I have my ear cells back?
Oh, man. Someone said autistic, and maybe. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from the casualty report.
We might need a poll on that.
Is he? Just ask that, but yes or no. But with that, it is absolutely great to see. I hope you all understand why the hype was there, because in a decent amount of categories like the supply trucks, the artillery, and the anti-aircraft warfare systems, the losses were great. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the casualty report. Once again, absolutely incredible to see. And we're now going to be moving out of the location unknowns as a whole and on up into the Kupiansk area, where unfortunately we have some sad news to report that a man was killed in the shelling of the city. And we can see that the war crimes prosecutor arrived to document the scene and make sure to take account of the war crimes that the Russians committed. The man was 66 years old and was killed inside of his home due to a Russian artillery attack. It's incredibly unfortunate to think that these kinds of attacks continue to persist, and the Russians are continuously targeting Ukrainian citizens across the entirety of the country and deliberate attacks. There's no other way we can put it at this point. They've killed so many citizens, it must be deliberate, and hopefully this war crimes prosecutor will be able to, in the future, hold the Russian war criminals that bombarded this house accountable for their crimes. With that, we're going to be moving on from that area and on down into the northeastern area as a whole. Once again, over the past 24 hours, not much has changed, but moving on into the area of Krasnorachinsky, we did see that the Omega unit was continuing to hit the Russians. And so, here's the clip. Well, we have to mute that. That's very copyrighted, in case y'all don't know. We can now see the Russian positions right here. We can see their trenches. And we now see them loading up the mortars and getting ready to fire them off at the Russians, so that way they can get those nice shots. We now see them firing the mortar, and we can now see the mortar rounds hitting the Russian trench in the distance. We can also see a highway behind them, which may be the highway that we see on the map. I'll go back to that one in a minute and make sure to get the name. We can see the mortar continuing to fire. And also, I see a lot of people talking about hearing loss. I will have y'all know, I did give a disclaimer that I was about to go hype. So sorry.
If you or a loved one have suffered hearing loss in the Enforcer channel, contact Enforcer Matt as soon as possible.
And we can see the mortars still raining down on the Russian positions here in the northeast and making sure to wipe them out. We now see Ukrainian forces moving out of the area after firing off their mortar. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but great to see that the Omega unit was able to hit Russian forces today with a mortar and hopefully inflict some losses. With that, we're going to be moving on into the Kremenna battlefield, or more so the Dubrova battlefield, where we saw Ukrainian forces, well, more so an M777, firing at the Russians in that area. We mainly fire at armored vehicles and howitzers, guns, artillery, for the most part. In the morning, our target was a 2A36 Gyansen. We made a few shots. The most important thing for us to know is the type of target. If it's a dugout, we need one charge. If it's a lightly armored vehicle, then it's another. On this gun score are several destroyed enemy artillery, armored vehicles, and ammo stockpiles. The defenders are destroying the occupiers non-stop. Helping in this is the American M777 howitzer with guided M982 Excalibur shells. The new target's coordinates were received after destroying the enemy 2A36 Gyansen gun. Artillerymen marched 25 kilometers to the new position. And we can see them doing that right here. We see them driving through a town as kids wave to them as they drive by. We see them dragging the M777 along. According to intelligence, the new target is another enemy Gyansen. Upon reaching the new positions, the unit immediately began deployment. We see some smoke coming from the background there in the distance. Put it this way, the battlefield is huge. We serve a very large area. So the choice of our position depends on where the target is. Yes, this was a Lancet that hit us. Their strike UAV, while we were working at one of our positions. It was maneuvering, trying to hit the ammo in our boot. It didn't exactly hit, just slightly damaged. There's still some damage on the glass. And he shows it right there. We now see them setting up the M777 and getting ready to fire, as the drone operator is trying to find the Gyansen. And we now see them firing the M777. And we now see the Gyansen being destroyed. The gun had various jobs. It goes where needed, all depending on its position. We fired at the 2A36 howitzer, fired accurately. They say it was damaged, all good.
Why that guy sound like he had the same tone of voice as Putin had?
I don't know. I didn't actually hear that in what I heard.
I didn't look up, and I was thinking, is that Putin speaking?
I mean, no, I don't know. But anyways, after the strike, the drone pilot sends a video of the damage to decide whether to shoot again or not. Did you hit it? We did. We'll be finishing it now. We hit it well, but more adjustment will come, and we'll do another shot. And this will probably be the final one for them. You now see them firing the M777 again. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but once again showing us an M777 in the area operating near the lines. Meanwhile, we got to see a very unfortunate Russian truck get slammed by one of those artillery shells later on in the day. And we hear the 80s techno music playing in the background, letting us know that things are about to get real. And we can now see the I don't even know what that is. Zil? It's not a Ural, but we can see it right there. We can see that one shell had already landed beforehand, and the second one landed right into the supply truck, destroying it completely. I guess you could say, Matthew, that the Ukrainians converted this supply truck into a convertible, or an open top, more like. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, and great to see the Ukrainians are helping in converting Russian supply trucks into open tops. We're now going to be moving on from that area around the Kreminna front line and past Bakmut, and down on into the area of Avdiivka, where we did see a decent pickup of action today. And to go over the past 24 hours in this area, at least from what we've seen, the Russians were able to make a concerted push in the village of Krasnoarivka, or at least on the outskirts, and have been able to take a curved tree line here, and also this tree line a little bit further north and west of the village. It appears that this has caused a decent fight, and the Ukrainian 59th Brigade, which has been holding this area for a good while, was able to stop that push. When you see the Russian tanks moving out here in the open, as I make sure to let us know that there is heavy metal playing in the background, and we now see one of the tanks being hit and coming to a slow rolling stop. We now see the other two Russian tanks continuing to move forward. We can see the cope cages on top of them, once again confirming to us that they are in fact Russian. You see the tank still rolling forward. We haven't seen the other two get hit yet, but we do know that the other one out there has been demobilized, and it appears it is smoking, maybe even destroyed. These two tanks are picking up the speed. We can kind of tell that they're going a little bit faster, but not fast enough to avoid what's coming for them, which was a javelin straight to the turret. We can now see that tank continuing to roll forward, but there is smoke billowing from what appears to be the engine bay, showing us that that tank will most likely come to a stop here soon. We see it's actually still going, interestingly enough, although we can tell that there has been some serious damage to the engine due to the smoke. We can see that the lead tank in the column apparently has not been hit yet, and that's the end of the clip. Interestingly enough, y'all wouldn't believe this, we actually have the video of the Ukrainian soldiers on the ground from this video in our next clip. And so here's the clip of them firing off that javelin that hit that tank.
Дивись, сука, десь їде тут. Давай!
We can hear the javelin CLU working. Well, I said CLUU, what the hell am I talking about? Anyways,
Да, зараз.
we can see them lining up the javelin.
За пилюкою заховався. Блядь.
We hear some explosions in the distance, most likely the first tank being hit.
Воно він, де, бачиш? Ніхуя не бачу, вообще. Дивіться, акура.
You see him still operating the CLU. It appears he's waiting for prime time to shoot. We hear a round whizzing over and exploding somewhere in the distance. And we can still hear the fight going on in front of them as those vehicles continue to advance across the field, like we saw in the drone video earlier.
Блядь, щоб він не впалив мене, нахуй.
We now hear the infantry opening up and firing at the advancing column.
Отак прямо! Отак прямо! Да, прямо так!
You now see him pointing at something in the distance as the javelin operator is still aiming the javelin. When you see something fire, it was not the javelin, however. It may have been an RPG. We hear more rounds flying over. We now hear bullets flying back at them and hitting around the ground as the javelin is still being aimed.
І я не бачу ніхуя де. Вообще не видно ніхуя. То так красиво його було видно, блядь. Лежать коти. За димами, оце він у тебе ще димом стоїть. За цією пилюгою, нахуй.
He's still aiming the javelin.
Десь бачу, кажуть, одну.
The infantry are still lighting up the Russians, and nothing has seriously changed yet.
Оно, диви, прямо,
We now
прямо,
see him
он,
pointing
диви,
out
кущак.
something.
Прямо, бач?
It's most likely the tank. See him zooming in the camera here. And that does appear to be the tank that we saw hit earlier. We now see the javelin firing, and it goes straight down and hits the tank dead on.
Oh,
And
wow,
we-
that was a cool angle to see it fire from, by the way.
That was really cool. Look at that again. Look at that arc. Here it comes. It goes up and then it comes straight down. That
That
was
thing took off like a
wild.
scooter.
Dude, that thing was crazy, man. And I didn't think they actually had that short of a range. It's so amazing to see. Also, his reaction is amazing to it as well. And some people are going, man, my eardrums. Y'all know the guys in that trench right there thought they had tinnitus from all the gunfire until that guy got hyped up and started screaming. Then they had tinnitus. With that, great to see that they were able to wipe out another tank with their javelin. And hopefully the engine damage that we saw it sustain on the drone video knocked it out later on. Although it did appear to continue rolling. Meanwhile, in the city of Avdiivka, we saw some Ukrainians trying to set up a grenade launcher, and it appears that they came under an artillery barrage. See them taking cover for a second with the AGS sitting in the middle of the street. We now see him moving over some sheet metal to put over the AGS so that way it's hidden and looks like debris on the street, and now they're going to go running for cover to wait out the artillery barrage. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but a very close call as far as that artillery went. It landed incredibly close nearby. We're now going to be moving out of the city of Avdiivka, a very, I guess you could say, interesting series of videos coming from there today, and luckily they were able to stop the Russian push just north of the town. We're now going to be moving all the way out of the Donetsk front and down near Velika Novosilka on the southern front in Zaporizhia, where we saw the Ukrainian soldiers saving a shell-shocked fox cub. And now we can hear another sea shanty. We can see the little fox right there. And I'm telling you, man, we'd be alright if we make it around the horn. That's what we see them taking care of the little fox right there and wiping off its face, and it's very cute. It's a very cute fox. Look at it. It looks like Mr. Corgi.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah, it kind of does. Also, he's about to start hitting your hand with a snout and wanting you to pet him. And let's see here. I'll go back here so that way we can read the translation. This soldier says, "Hello, friends. Our little comrade is okay. I'll show you how it's feeling now." And we see the little fox chewing a hole through a box and then climbing through it. We now see it playing with a small plushy toy. And it's a very cute fox, I would have to say. It's a very incredibly cute fox. Look at it. It's just so cute. It's incredibly cute. We now see the fox climbing up a backpack and then looking at the guy holding the camera and then walking away. It is somewhat confused, but it is starting to get the corgi spirit down by trying to jump onto couches, chairs, and other objects so that way it's at a higher level than the ground floor. We can now see it made it up there, and it's most likely yapping. And so let's hear it yap. Hopefully the corgis can't hear this through the headset. It sounds like a dog.
Man, it sounds like a dog. It really does.
It sounds like a dog. And so with that, that's the end of the clip, and it appears that the Ukrainians are domesticating foxes. With that, we're now going to be
Man, we
moving...
found out what that fox said, all right.
Man, that fox said... But anyways, with that, we're on to Star of Mayorsk, where we saw some tanks and APCs destroyed today. Oh, that's Chad music for sure. Someone pull out the red meat, and we can see a Russian tank moving across the field. We now see the Ukrainians firing an SPG-9 and a Stugna and hitting a tank. We now see them raining down artillery onto a tree line here on some drone footage. And the next clip, we can see them once again firing at another Russian tank with a Stugna. And poof. Wait, that was the tank firing. Poof. There we go. They got it. And we now see the tank burning. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But great to see. And good to know that the Chernovo-Kalina Brigade in the area has been continuing to destroy Russian armor throughout the front lines. We're now going to be moving on into the area of Chavoni, where we saw that the mobilized are not being given paid leave. Outrageous, right? And that's what these Russian soldiers think from the Altai territory. Once again, it seems that all the problems are coming from the Altai territory. But here's the clip. Comrades of the Altai region, the Lam region, the military and the passing service are addressing you on mobilization of the Regiment 1442. We served for 8 months, and at the moment we are in the SVO zone, but we were not given vacations. Thus, the law of the commanding officer of the Russian Federation is violated. We ask you to help us in solving this issue and getting us that paid leave. And
he wants a vacation.
He wants a vacation. This man has the audacity to ask for a vacation. What does he think this is? A normal job? This is the Russian army. You're supposed to stay here until you die. It's like, what the hell does he think? But anyways, I wanted to show you that because it's always good to see that the Russian workers are about to go on strike. Hopefully they'll finally be given a nap at least, and that will only be given to them by the Ukrainians' anti-Russian union. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the southern front line in Zaporizhia and on up to Kyiv, because we've covered all of the news from the front lines north to south, east to west, inside Ukraine, and out of Ukraine. And so now it's time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 451 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні перший день зустрічей та перемовин в Японії напередодні саміту Сімки. Координуємо позиції з партнерами, готуємо нові спільні кроки. Оборона, зброя, ППО, винищувачі, залучаємо якнайбільше країн та лідерів заради України. Формула миру. Довготривалі програми підтримки України, фінанси та економіка. Зустрівся із Джорджіо Мелоні, головою уряду Італії. Подивились, як виконуються наші домовленості із переговорів у Римі. Розповів Джорджі про домовленості на саміті Ліги Арабських Держав. Подивились, як можемо зараз з Італією посилити наші можливості захищати життя від російського повітряного терору. Переговори з Ріші, паном прем'єр-міністром Великої Британії. Обговорили наші двосторонні відносини, нашу оборону. Подякував за лідерство в розвитку наших можливостей у небі. Британія дуже активно взялася за сучасні винищувачі для України, і це історичні речі. Говорив з прем'єр-міністром Індії Моді. Серйозна розмова, я поінформував про прогрес щодо нашої формули миру. Ми пройшли вже багато етапів з представленням формули лідерами і країнам з різних частин світу. Напередодні успішно представили формулу учасникам саміту Ліги Арабських Держав. І зробимо все, щоб залучення світу до нашої мирної ініціативи було максимальним із можливого. Вірю, що Індія візьме участь у відновленні міжнародного порядку, заснованого на правилах, які очевидно потрібні всім вільним націям. Обговорили підтримку в розмінуванні, зміцнення нашої медицини. Говорив із президентом Євроради Шарлем Мішелем. Безпека, оборона, економіка, наша спільна політика, об'єднання потенціалів України та усього Євросоюзу. Я дякую тобі, Шарле, за твою щиру, незмінну та дієву підтримку. Зустрівся з президентом Франції Макроном. Ми регулярно обмінюємось поглядами на безпекову ситуацію, розглядаємо ті чи інші варіанти наших спільних оборонних та політичних дій. Так і цього разу. Змістовна розмова додає впевненості у нашому руху до перемоги України. Була зустріч із паном канцлером Німеччини Шольцем. Подякував за надзвичайно вагому підтримку Німеччиною нашого захисту. Це і ППО, можливості нашої армії на землі, наші економіки, нашої політики. Обговорили з Олафом, як можемо прискорити чесний мир для України, як можемо посилити нашу спільну роботу в рамках Сімки. Ще одне, як і завжди, дякую нашим воїнам, кожному і кожній, хто захищає українську землю, українське море і українське небо. Впевнений, повернемось з цього візиту із ще більшими можливостями для вас, наші захисники і захисниці. Слава вам, усім, хто в бою заради нашої держави, хто на бойових постах і в бойових завданнях, хто тренує наших воїнів, хто відновлює наших бійців після поранень і хто допомагає нам захищати життя і незалежність. Не буває такого дня, щоб Україна не стала сильнішою. Слава Україні!
And Hiram Slava and nice hotel room.
And with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 451 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that wraps up our nightly news summary as well. And thank you all so much once again for watching this news summary. And if y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, because it makes us really happy when people subscribe. And not only that, it keeps you apprised of the news. We run this stream 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single day of the week, making sure to keep everyone apprised of what's going on in the war in Ukraine. The only day we take off is Monday. We do not run streams Monday, but short war summaries, which are 2 to 3 minute long videos covering some of the highlights of the war in video evidence, are always put out 7 days a week, although I'm not sure if one will be put out on Monday this upcoming week. I'm sorry, I said that's every day of the week, 7 days a week, and now I'm already putting conditions on that, but still, thank you, everyone, so much once again for watching. We're about to be moving on into the question segment, where we're going to be addressing all of the super chats we've gotten tonight and as many live chats as we possibly can. And so with that, we are now on into the question segment. But before we get on into the questions, we have to cover the polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and for our very first poll for our last question segment, it says, what do you believe prompted the West to provide fighter jets to Ukraine after initially refusing? It looks like 72% said it has been in the works for months, 4% said unsure, 9% said the U.S. received concerning intel, and 15% said the U.S. wants to escalate gradually. And I would go with the 72%. I think it's probably been in the works for many months. We got some indications, I believe it was about a month or a month and a half ago, that the U.S. was thinking about sending them, but they weren't ready to make it public yet. It's been kind of seeming like maybe they're on the fence about it. The U.S. administration has been saying they weren't going to do it, but they've said that about almost every piece of equipment that we've inevitably sent to Ukraine. So I'm definitely with the 72%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to be with the 72% for that reason. We have said that about everything at this point. I have a feeling it'll only be a matter of time before we reverse that decision and then agree to send it. And so with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one says, today, Zelensky met with India's Prime Minister Modi, and he refused to condemn Russia. And what are your thoughts? 63% said no progress made and India is complicit. 8% said unsure. 6% said, I doubt it, but maybe. And 23% said, I'm hopeful that Ukraine made progress. And I'm also with the 63% on this one. I think India is complicit. The fact that it's refusing to condemn Russia in the face of this very blatant violation of international law by invading a sovereign country says volumes. I think India is going along somewhat similar lines that China is doing. They're trying to pretend like they want peace by meeting with Zelensky, but at the same time, their actions don't indicate they actually want that. I wouldn't trust Modi, and I'm pretty sure that Zelensky doesn't. But he did the right thing and met with him anyway, being a good diplomat. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's not really shocking, considering that the Indians are doing pretty well for themselves, buying cheap Russian oil and resources right now. So he probably doesn't want to condemn them, so that way he doesn't get his country booted out of that lucrative resource trade. That's most likely the reason why he did that. That's not really shocking to me that the Indians would. They are kind of complicit to the Russians in a way, or complicit to their actions in the war. But at the same time, we must always remember that the Indians get a little bit of a special leeway and some special room because they are important in the grand scale of things to trying to counter the Chinese Belt and Road project. So we still have to try and keep good terms with them instead of bringing down the hammer on them. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, at least as far as my opinion is concerned. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next poll says, the NYT reports that some Ukrainian citizens in Kyiv are upset about Zelensky's trips abroad. And what are your thoughts? 90%, which is a very, very high number, said Zelensky must travel to get support. 3% said unsure. 3% said I'm on the fence on this one. And 4% said I agree and he should stay in Ukraine. And of course, I am definitely within the 90%. There's no reason Zelensky shouldn't travel around to get support in person. That sends a much stronger message than simply showing up on a Zoom call. And it's not like Zelensky's actually physically fighting the war himself. So by him leaving, it's not like Ukraine's losing manpower or anything to that degree. So you can't really please everybody. Ukraine also has its own political issue, even in the midst of a war. And I think some folks are going to complain no matter what. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I think that people are going to complain no matter what, and I bet it's probably a smaller amount of people complaining. Zelensky has done more traveling around the world and visiting countries in person than he ever did through Zoom call at this point. So I'd have to say that it's imperative to the Ukrainians and the future of the war effort that Zelensky does travel internationally and continues to, I guess you could say, acquire support abroad. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next poll and last poll says the U.S. says that Ukraine war might become a frozen conflict, meaning the armed conflict will end, but there will be no peace. And what are your thoughts? 50% said it's very possible and concerning, 6% said unsure, 29% said it's possible but unlikely, and 15% said that's not a possibility. And on this one, I am almost undecided, but I'm going to lean toward the 29% that said it's possible but unlikely. A frozen conflict, meaning that the fighting stops, nobody's shooting each other, but there's no peace agreement. So technically, the conflict could just spark back up at any time, and apparently U.S. officials think that might be the case. I would say probably unlikely. I think there will be a resolution to it with Ukraine actually winning. Obviously, Russia's not going to win this. I think that's becoming very clear at this point. But I don't think it'll become frozen. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't think it'll become frozen either, because if it becomes frozen, the Russians will be hindered greatly from the imposing sanctions we have on them, and the Russians know that if they begin to lose this war, there's no point in still having, I guess you could say, the sanctions still lingering over their heads because there was no official end to this war. So I have a feeling that it most likely will not be a frozen war for that reason, and once the Ukrainians push them out for the large part, the Russians will most likely look for some kind of a peace agreement at that point. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the questions.
All right, and moving back into our Super Chat questions, up first, we have a $100 donation from channel legend BC Skyman. And thank you very much, BC, for the support. He says, have you seen the Bayraktar drones in action anymore? And what is the most potent weapon that Ukraine has or needs to win this war? An awesome job, guys, and Slav Ukraine. And thank you, BC.
And thank you for the massive amount of support, BC, and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you do make it possible for us to do this day in and day out, night after night, to cover the news of the war. And I thank you so much for appreciating this channel enough to find it worthwhile to support. To answer that question, I have not really seen Bayraktars in action much, but the one that the Ukrainians shot down over Kyiv does prove to us that they are still being used. It's just that we're not seeing the video footage of them in use anymore to really say how effective they are and how used they are. As far as the most important weapon for the Ukrainians to win this war at this point, I would have to largely say, and I'm trying to think, because every single weapon fills a niche. So there isn't one that's kind of like the be-all, do-all, the best all-round vehicle. There's more so just the one, best vehicle for every category, the one best vehicle for every category. But if I had to say that one weapon was truly war-changing, I would still kind of pick the HIMARS. The HIMARS has proved to be an invaluable weapon to the Ukrainian armed forces at this point, and even though F-16s will be adding a lot to what Ukraine can do, I think the HIMARS is really the backbone at this point of Ukrainian strategic, I guess you could say, fire or Ukrainian strategic support as far as the front lines are concerned. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the mass amount of support, BC Skyman, and also for you being a channel legend. You have been around forever on this channel and helping us to keep this thing rolling. If it wasn't for folks like you, this channel would never be possible. We would have never been able to keep it running. You help us to keep this thing ad-free, sponsor-free. You help us to run this channel the way we run it, covering the news how we want to and making sure to avoid politics. You help this channel to be what it is. And I got to thank you so much for supporting us, because that support does mean a lot. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Fang Wolf Prime. And thank you very much for the support. And I said, first time catching a stream live, and I don't have a question, so please pick one from the chat, and Slav Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support, Fangwolf Live, and also congratulations on catching this for the first time live. I'm supposing that's also your first super chat as well, and I gotta thank you so much for that and helping this channel to keep on rolling and appreciating us enough to support us. And we will make sure to grab a live chat as well. And thank you so much for the high praise. And so let's grab that live chat.
All right, and the live chat question goes to Sig for Life, who says, if Russia takes Bakhmut, in your opinion, where will they go next?
If Russia takes Bakmhut, they're probably not going to go anywhere. They're probably going to take the reserves, and I'm saying if they win the battlefield, because technically they kind of have taken Bakmhut today, but they have not secured the flanks and stopped the Ukrainians from sweeping around. If they are able to stop that as well, they're most likely going to move their reserves elsewhere and probably wait for a Ukrainian counteroffensive. They're probably not going to go anywhere else. There really is nowhere else for them to go. That I guess you could say is sizable. Maybe Avdiivka is one of the few places I could see, but that is even a little bit out of the question because it's proven to be very difficult down there, and they probably reached their maximum battlefield density in that area that they could. So I would say that they're probably just going to once again reorganize a reserve to have one, so that way if the Ukrainians conduct a counteroffensive, they can try and race forces into that area to stop the damage that that counteroffensive would cause. That's most likely what they would be doing. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Marion Deemer. And thank you, Marion, very much for the support. And also, of course, being a longtime viewer as well. And Marion says, you guys rock. And the LSA is a great family. And I agree.
And thank you so much for the support, Marion Deebert. The LSA is an amazing family. The best there is. I'm telling you. The best. The best, Jerry. The best. And I got to thank you so much for enjoying the Lee Spring Army. It's an amazing community. The best on YouTube. There really is, actually. And also, I thank you so much for saying we rock. We try our best each and every night to deliver as far as the stream goes. As far as hype, as far as news, as far as the information, and also the entertainment side of things. I always hope that we deliver on that, and I hope that tonight we've been able to deliver that as well, although the news has been a little iffy as far as the Russians possibly taking Bakmut, and then, of course, the counterattacks still going on around the flanks. All of that has kind of been a little circumstantial tonight, and I thank you so much once again, regardless of the kind of news that we're having to cover, supporting this channel once again and enjoying what we do, because we try our best, and I'm glad that we were able to deliver once again tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Marion Deemer, for also being an old guard on this channel.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Psyops. Psyops. And thank you, Psyops, for the support. He says, Miss Disa, thank you for your help last night. I got some really bad news. Couldn't sleep, anxious. She talked with me and helped. And sometimes all you need is a friend. Thanks, buddy. LSA Strong. Live chat question, please. And Matt on. And, oh, wait, Matt Pants on.
And thank you so much for the support, Psyops. And if that is in regards to what you sent over the Discord, I don't know if it is. I think it may be or may not be. If that's in regards to that, honestly, I'm out of caring at this point. I've sat there and dropped it. I'll tell you this because this is just the thing in between you and me. I dropped it. We have not mentioned anything about that for about a month at this point. And if someone's going to sit there and start saying stuff about us again, I could honestly care less. All I can say in response to that is magna cum laude, and we're keeping this thing rolling. I don't care what anyone says out there at this point. I'm running the news. I'm supporting Ukraine. They can do whatever they want. I can honestly care less about them at this point. But if that did bother you, don't worry. It didn't bother us at all. Honestly, at this point, like I said, I'm beyond caring about that. And I've got to thank you so much, Miss Disa, who may be here tonight, for talking. Oh, wait a minute, hang on, sorry. It's not that. I was trying to piece together what was in the Discord DM and also the super chat. But I hope that your baby nephew does have a good surgery. I actually didn't know about that. I don't think that was in the Discord DM. But I do hate to hear that. Hopefully it will be a success. If it's already happened, I hope that is a success. And I thank you once again for to Miss Disa for talking to him about that, because that is some pretty tough stuff, and hopefully the little nephew can get through it just fine. And also I thank you for the support, Psyops, and helping this thing to keep on running. And I would certainly say sometimes all you need is a friend. There is a lot of friends in the Leaf Spring Army. Really everyone in the Leaf Spring Army is a friend to each other. I have never seen anyone who's really been hostile in the Leaf Spring Army, and whenever we've had one of those, they usually get either ostracized by the Leaf Spring Army, or they get
the Leaf Spring Army,
the Leaf Spring Army, or they get booted by Matt pretty quickly. And so I've got to thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling, Psyops, and thank you so much once again for the support. Even tonight, because tonight wasn't a great night of news, and I know that a lot of people always like to come here and hear great news, and today wasn't as great a day as normal. Bakmut didn't hold any strategic importance. We've been saying that for 8 months, but still, it's never fun to hear that a town was possibly lost. Hopefully the Ukrainians can reclaim it at lightning speed. They may be able to, maybe in a month's time. But who really knows? And thank you so much once again. The LSA is the best. Long live the LSA. And also, we will make sure to take a live chat. And thank you so much once again.
All right. And the live chat question is going to go to Private Public 77, who says, is it true in World War II, Allies dropped instructions to Germans on how to get out of combat through illness? And could something like that work today?
I think something could maybe possibly work like that, but modern medical technology, even in Russia, is most likely in the 1970s or the 80s at this point. And so they may be able to tell whether someone really is sick or not, to the point that they'll force them back onto the front. Even then, if they see a lot of people getting sick, they may just force them to stay on the front because they can't suffer the manpower loss. So I have a feeling that that is a possibility to do something like that, but the probability of it working may be a lot less than it was in the Second World War, at least from what we can assume. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Psyops, for sponsoring that live chat, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope we answer that live chat fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much.
And up next.
Oh, okay, dang. All right. I was trying to get through my spell there, man. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
It took about a 5-second pause there.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. I try and get through my spiel to tell people we appreciate them, and then I get cut off. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But anyways, what was I trying to say? Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for the support, and helping this channel to keep on running, yeah? Oh, man, I'm telling you. Because support like that helps us to keep this thing running. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. Now, Matthew's going to run me on from saying this and get on to the next one. I'm just kidding with you, but on with that. We're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Santiago Flores, who puts in a $10 super chat and says, for the coffee fund, and pick a question from the live chat, please.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying this channel enough to support the coffee fund. Supporting the coffee fund, of course, means a lot to me personally. Nitro Cold Brew is rising in price, very sadly. I think the last time I bought it to today, I actually got some today, it's risen by about 30 cents, I think, per bottle. And that's actually a pretty big spike. I think it went from like $4.30 to like $4.79. And of course, I'm just kidding. It's like $1 increase for 2 bottles. But I do thank you so much for the support to that coffee fund, because that allows me to buy those giant liter bottles of Nitro Cold Brew and just drink through them to keep the stream running. I actually had a full portion of coffee tonight. Do you know how amazing that is? It's great. And that also allowed me to get hyped as hell through the Russian loss segment. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. Thank you for sponsoring my coffee addiction. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and that live chat question is going to go to Daniel Thompson, who says, what red line would Russia have to cross in Ukraine, Europe, or the North Pacific for U.S. Congress to declare war?
Nuclear, biological, or chemical attack on Ukraine would be the red line. As far as Europe is concerned, it would most likely be an armed attack against a NATO member, although we went back and looked at Article 5, and we wouldn't have to go to war with them over something like that. That's actually a decision. That's one of the decisions we can make in response to that, but it isn't necessarily the only response we can have to it. So we would probably have an armed response if they attacked a NATO country. And then in the North Pacific, if they started to do hostile actions against the South Koreans or the Japanese, we would most likely get involved then, although that's the most unlikely of them all. The European situation is also quite unlikely. Nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons is actually the most likely one. Not the nuclear side of things, but the chemical and biological side of warfare is not that far away. It's never a distant reality in any war, and that's why you always see that every soldier is still equipped with nuclear, biological, or chemical warfare equipment or personal protective equipment to make sure that if anything like that does happen, they don't immediately become a victim of such an attack. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
You know, I just realized that, you know, there's NBC News. I don't know if that stands for nuclear, biological, and chemical news.
Let's pull that up. What does NBC
National Broadcasting Company, I think is what it actually means.
National Broadcasting Company. CBS stands for...
I was right.
Columbia Broadcasting System. BBC stands for British Broadcasting Corporation, and ABC stands for American Broadcasting Company.
Man, this is like when rappers all like start on SoundCloud and they all call themselves Lil Something.
Man, this is like every single channel on YouTube calling themselves Something Media. Oh, yes. Man. But anyway, so with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we answered that fairly well.
And the next one goes to Raj Kapoor, who puts in a $10 super chat. It says, here before Bakhmut is recaptured by Ukraine, and what war in history would you compare the Battle of Bakhmut to?
That's a tough one. I would say that I would compare the battle, and this is not an extensive list. This is just a few that I can think of, and of course, a lot of them are from the Second World War. Well, actually, no, not all of them are going to be from the Second World War. I'll try and throw in some other ones. The Battle of Stalingrad, the Battle of, Aachen. I would also say that the Battle of Verdun would fall in that category. Really, any battle where the Germans conducted an offensive against Allied forces in the First World War, I would say it's comparable. Like the battles of Passchendaele, the battles of the Marne. The Battle of Verdun, of course, is probably the most fitting one. During the Civil War, I would say the Siege of Petersburg and the Siege of Vicksburg are very similar to the Battle of Bakhmut in at least the way the battle was fought. I would also say that the Battle of Vyborg during the Finnish Winter War was also a very similar battle to Bakhmut. However, none of these were really as long stretched as the Battle of Bakhmut was. The Battle of Bakhmut lasted over 8 months. Most of those battles lasted... Well, the Battle of Verdun was, I think, the only one that lasted as long or longer than the Battle of Bakhmut. All of the other ones actually lasted a shorter amount of time, like 4 months. Let me pull this up. The Siege of Vicksburg. How long did that last? It lasted from May 18th to July 4th. Actually less than a month. And that was considered in the Civil War to be a meat grinder of a battle, the Siege of Vicksburg. The Siege of Petersburg was also considered a meat grinder as well. And let's see how long the Siege of Petersburg lasted. Let's see here. This one lasted considerably longer, from June of 1864 to March of 1865, almost at the end of the Civil War. So this is probably the only other battle, rather than Verdun, that's comparable in length to the Battle of Bakhmut. And once again, this one was also considered a meat grinder. This one truly was a meat grinder. Whenever you talk about the Battle of the Crater, which is a largely unknown historical tidbit about the Siege of Petersburg. I'll actually show you all the crater. It still exists to this day. So let me go find Petersburg. So here's Petersburg. And then we go down here. And here's the battlefield. And there's the crater. And this is the crater. That circle right there is the crater. So what happened was that there was a large amount of trench warfare going on in in Petersburg, Virginia. The Union forces were here to the south, and Confederate forces were here in the north. The Union tunneled under the battlefield into the Confederate trenches and placed a massive amount of dynamite and explosives below the trench and blew it wide open. It created a massive crater. And as Union forces raced forward, and a lot of the Union forces that were involved in this specific battle, the Battle of the Crater, were actually part of the colored troops units, which became a huge part of controversy later after the blistering defeat and losses that they took during the Battle of the Crater. These forces were ordered into the crater. The problem is that the crater was so large, and also the walls of the crater were so steep that once these units entered the crater, they couldn't get back out. And the whole Union force, commanded, I believe, by Colonel or General Ferrara, it's a very similar name to Ferrari, they just ran in there, and they didn't have any other, I guess you could say, units that were outside of the crater. They were all in the crater. So once these forces ran into the crater, the Confederates literally just circled around the top of the crater and just started firing inside of it. And so thousands of Union soldiers ended up getting killed. Very few of them made it out, and almost all of them ended up, the remainder of them that survived ended up being taken prisoner. Now, the part that was of massive controversy at the time was that most of the units that were involved in this assault were colored troops, and they say that that decision was made deliberately by the general who was in charge of this assault because he knew that it was going to be a very deadly one, and so he decided to put them up front instead of the other soldiers that were under his command, so that way they would take the brunt of the losses. That's at least how the story goes, and the controversy. It's never been truly founded in, I guess you could say, the facts, but it is a rather compelling story and a rather compelling theory, especially seeing how the battle turned out. But that is a very similar battle, at least in the concept that was there. The Confederates were trying to bleed the Union dry. The Union was trying to take Petersburg because Petersburg was actually far more important than Bakmut ever would be, because Petersburg was the main rail hub leading into Richmond, and so if the Union took Petersburg, Richmond would most likely fall not that long after. So those are the battles I would say are the most comparable, and also giving a little bit of detail about Petersburg to make it sound a little bit more convincing as a Bakmut of its time. But you know, those would be the ones I would find comparable, at least a few off the top of my head. There's many others, but sadly, I can't really think of those. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping this thing to keep on rolling.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Psyops yet again, and he puts in another $20 donation. And thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. He says, about Bakmut, Ukraine worked hard maintaining an escape route and keeping it open. Also, don't forget about how crafty those wonderful Ukrainians are. Could be a trap to start the offensive, and never give up hope. And a live chat question, please.
And thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. And we will make sure to get a live chat question. And I would say that they have maintained that route incredibly well. If you look at the battlefield, the way it's formed, at least from our information here, they have been able to keep a corridor leading out of Bakmut the entire time, and that's impressive, especially considering the forces that were exerted on the flanks by the Russians during the earlier phases of the battle. That was incredible to really say, and they are a very crafty group of people, the Ukrainians are. And we can even see that by how they're conducting the counteroffensives on the flanks. And so I would not doubt it at all that this may be an attempt by them to put the Russians in a pretty bad bind within the city as they continue to swing outside of it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we will make sure to get a question from the chat. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Private Public 77 once again, who says, can the F-16 stand up to ground AA better than Soviet aircraft?
Not really any aircraft can stand up well to AA. They're all about as fragile as the other. So I would say that an F-16 will probably do as well standing up to AA, if it was to be hit, as a MiG-29, an Su-27, or even a MiG-31. Once an aircraft is hit by a surface-to-air missile, there really is no chance of the aircraft usually surviving. There is the occasional chance where one did. I believe there's an instance in the Iraq War where an F-15, which an F-15 has never actually been shot down, it did get hit, and half of one of its wings was lost, and it managed to fly back. But I'm not really sure if that was an F-15 or an F-16. I'm not really sure about that story. But usually the chances are is that no aircraft survives a direct hit. Even A-10s and Su-25s take hits, and they're considered armored tanks, and they usually go down from hits as well. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Hoodoo Texas adding in a little bit of a correction to the story of the Battle of Petersburg. I'm just saying the one that I heard. I didn't really read a lot about the Battle of Petersburg, so you're probably more correct about that than I am. But that was the story I was told when I heard the story of the Battle of Petersburg. But with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for support, and I hope we addressed that fairly well.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Bud, who says, I love the channel, and heart.
And thank you so much for loving the channel. I don't know why in the world I had to let out that little but still, thank you so much once again for the support and enjoying this channel and appreciating it enough to find it worthwhile to support and helping us to keep this thing the way we run it. If it wasn't for folks like y'all who supported this channel, we wouldn't this channel wouldn't exist the way it is. It wouldn't there wouldn't be a channel out there that's politics free, that is ad free, sponsor free. We're free in every single way. You know, it's a great thing to be, and we're a very rare channel in that instance. And thanks to y'all's support, we're able to keep this channel the way it is, the special way it is, completely different than every other channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for the kind words as well.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Raj Kapoor. And thank you, Raj, for the support. He says, Shashi Thurar, I believe is how it's said. I'm probably butchering it. But a prominent politician of the opposition in India told Modi to condemn Russia during the first few days of the invasion. So wait for the 2024 elections, and India's position may change.
And I thank you for the support, Raj Kapoor, and also sharing that with us. Unfortunately, I'm not really that well versed in Indian politics, and so that is really interesting here. I actually didn't know that there was such an instance like that in Indian politics, and we will be waiting to see what happens in 2024. It may be too long past by that point for it to directly pertain to the war, but it will be important moving forward for the Indians to be on the same page as the West if they were able to win the election. And so with that, thank you so much once again for sharing that with us and giving us a little bit of information about India's at least pro-Ukraine or neutral Ukrainian politics as far as that goes. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling, because folks like you do make it possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to CK Bold, who puts in a $5 super chat. And guess what CK Bold asked for?
A live chat.
He did. And thank you, CK Bold, very much for that continuous support. Very consistent. I always know what you're going to ask. And we're going to grab that live chat question. And it's going to go to, let's see here. It's going to go to Stephen White, who says, how likely is it that Wagner PMC falls back from Bakmut on the 25th?
I would say Wagner PMC on the 25th. 5 days is a little short in my opinion, to be honest. I think it would probably take maybe a few weeks for the Ukrainians to swing around the flanks far enough that the Wagner has to start withdrawing through the town. That's what I'm thinking, but I may be wrong. It really just depends on how quickly the Ukrainians are able to conduct these flanking maneuvers. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much, CK Bold, once again, for supporting this channel, helping us to keep this thing rolling, and also helping us to get to a live chat. And I hope I answered that live chat fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And we have a $5 super chat from Paul Plonsky, who says, in your opinion, do you think Ukraine is still outgunned? Slava Ukraine and Slava LSA.
And Slava Ukraine. And I would say that in relative areas of the front line, they are outgunned. In Bakmut, they're actually outgunned. But overall, as far as the technology advantage they have, they're not that outgunned anymore. Still outgunned a little, but not by much. The Western tech is certainly giving them the ability to outgun the Russians with less firepower. So I would say that the gap is starting to close with each passing week, but it's not all the way there yet. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and also helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is a $5 super chat from Nubbing Fluffing Cat, who says, do the Russians seriously not have any decent tanks left? Why are they using old, rusty, and crusty T-62s? Where are those T-14s that they hyped up? And thanks.
And thank you so much for the support. And to answer that question, the advanced Russian tanks, they're still out there, but they're in incredibly few numbers. And we saw that a lot of them, mostly T-90Ms and a single T-90A, were destroyed outside of Donetsk not too long ago during a HIMARS strike. So we know that they're generally almost completely gone in number. The best tanks that the Russians have at this point in mass are T-72As and maybe a few T-72Bs, and now they're starting to bring in far more T-62Ms and T-55s to try and fill in really every part of the front line at this point. for the most part, to answer that question, most of the modern tanks have been destroyed. The ones they have left are kind of rare to see on the front lines, and they're now replacing almost their entire armor force with T-62s, T-72s, the very early version of the T-72, and the T-55s. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kakari Firehawk, who puts in a 5 and says 2040 presidential elections, Enforcer versus Mark. Whoever wins, both will be for the better good of us all.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And I got to say, if Mark was my, I guess you could say, what would the name be? Rival, adversary, what would the name be, Matthew? What would the name? Opponent. Opponent. An opponent can be described in one word. But if Mark
Mark's going to be Enforcer's op.
Man, he is. Man, for real. But I would say that if Mark was my opponent, I'd probably lose, hands down. But still, hopefully, you can be my VP instead. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. Thank you also for hopefully voting for me in that election, if you were given the 2 options. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on rolling. Thanks, folks like you help this thing to stay possible, even on nights like these. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Kristen Adams. And thank you very much, Kristen, for the support. And they said, thanks for what you do. You worked it well tonight, given the downer info, and take a question.
And thank you for the support, Kristen Adams. I tried my best to make it a light thing. It's kind of tough to say, because while it doesn't have any strategic significance, no one likes to hear that a town that everyone put so much weight on was lost. And once again, it really makes it hard for me to make it sound like it's not a big deal when everyone else in the world wanted it to be a big deal. That, I've got to be honest, it kind of does aggravate me a good bit, how many people really overplayed the importance of Bakmut. And, you know, and a lot of regular channel viewers who have been here forever can tell you that ever since the beginning of the channel, we have never ever said that Bakmut was a truly important city. Even when the battle started, we said it was largely an insignificant town, and there was really no point in fighting for it. I'm sure someone could find the timestamp if they want to go back to one of the first streams we made where Bakmut was starting a battle. It really annoyed me a great deal that throughout the 8 months this battle went on, for about 5 months of it, everyone in the world was in agreement that it wasn't a big deal, and then all of a sudden, people wanted to make it seem like Bakmut is some kind of a massive deal. Not really for the Ukrainians being able to inflict casualties on the Russians, but as a town itself. And, you know, people started throwing on notions that if Bakmut is lost, it's the gateway to the rest of Ukraine, which makes no sense, because Lysychansk would be more so of the gateway than Bakmut would be, and that was lost in like July of last year. So I didn't really like that people went around and said that a lot, because it makes it really hard for me to go on air and, you know, say what I've been saying for 8 months, because then people go, oh yeah, well, so-and-so said it was a really important city. I know, because, you know, he did it to get views, and, you know, and it really annoyed me, but I'm glad that we were able to get through it, at least in a positive light tonight, and hopefully we don't have to go back and recover anything like that anytime in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Kristen. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, we will make sure to take a question from the live chat. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the question from the live chat goes to Victor Snowberger, who says, where does Indonesia, let's start over, where does Indonesia fit in this mess, and are they involved at all?
I don't know if the Indonesians are involved or not. I would assume they're probably not involved in any large way, because I've never heard of them providing military support. Although I do know that in the United Nations General Assemblies, wherever they held a vote, the Indonesians always condemn the Russians, but I don't think they do anything beyond that. So with that, hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for helping this thing to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Sean Swansea. And thank you, Sean, very much for the support. He says, new and I love the channel. Can you inform all the newer fans why you choose not to cover Ukrainian casualties?
Yes, I can. And I thank you so much once again for the support, Sean, and also being a new viewer and finding this channel worthwhile to support. And to answer that question, the reason why we don't cover Ukrainian casualties is because we don't ever get a good number on Ukrainian casualties. The Russians claim they've killed 5 million Ukrainian soldiers. Problem is, there's not 5 million of them. And also that's a bit of an exaggeration as well, so don't take that like for granted, because I know someone's about to take that literally. But we don't ever get any numbers from the Ukrainian government. The Russians heavily exaggerate their numbers, so we don't really report Ukrainian casualties for those two reasons, because there's really no reliable number to go off of. Every once in a while, we do make an approximate, and I think the last approximate we made is that probably around 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died, maybe even 40,000. But that's once again an approximate. We don't really have anything to base that off of, rather than a kill-to-death ratio that every once in a while kind of gets thrown out there, and so we can kind of do a basic calculation off of that and maybe guesswork our way into how many Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. That doesn't even count the citizens in Ukraine, which we also don't have a complete number for, but that's why we usually don't include any kind of Ukrainian casualty stats. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Sean Swansea, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you so much for appreciating this channel enough to support us to help this thing to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Carlo Matola, and says, oh goodness, you saw that, I imagine. But Carlo, he puts in something in a foreign language. It's either Russian or Ukrainian. So let me ask Google Translate. And it says, detected Ukrainian. Thank goodness. He says, I leave my question to the audience in Ukrainian. And guess what? We will grab a live chat question in honor of Carlo. And the live chat question is going to go to Evanescent Wave, who says, with all the large numbers of destroyed artillery and the low number of tanks, could it be evidence that the Russians are finally running out of tanks of any vintage?
Yes, we've been saying that for a good while at this point. We've been saying that the Russians have most likely run out of usable tanks, and they're most likely holding the T-62s, T-55s in reserve for the most part, because while they're crappy and largely inexpensive, that's all they have left, and there's going to be no replacements for those tanks after those are destroyed. And so we have been going off of that for a while, that they may have just simply run out of tanks and they're not using them as much, or they're using APCs in their stead. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address that live chat that was sponsored by you fairly well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running while I started my way on through that and on into the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Dumper Bob, who puts in a $2 super chat and says, Slava Ukraine. And I say, Herum Slava. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I also say, Slava Ukraini. And thank you once again, Dupper Bob, for consistently supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. If it wasn't for folks like you, Dupper Bob, who always supported this channel, it wouldn't be possible for us to keep this thing rolling. And I got to thank you so much once again, because every single bit of support counts in helping this channel to keep on rolling. Also, once again, to explain this, because some people may be new and may not know how this works, and I haven't explained it tonight. We run our stream through two different, I guess you could say, monetization paths. If you want to support us and help us to keep this channel running, you can send in a super chat. If you want to support Ukraine, we run Sunday fundraisers. Tomorrow is Sunday, so we will be running a Sunday fundraiser tomorrow night on stream, and you can support a Ukrainian, well, a nonprofit that supports Ukraine then. You can also go into the link in the description below and go straight to United 24 and support them there. But we always want to make it clear where people's support is going, because I don't want anyone to ever have the question of where does it go. I'm just waiting for in a minute, Matthew, for you to ban someone who's going to say something, because every time I go through the spiel, it always happens. But we always want to be as transparent as possible. There are plenty of scammers out there trying to take advantage of people's kindness, and we want to make it as clear as possible where your support goes, so that way we don't possibly fall within that category. And also we want to make sure that y'all are as safe as possible and can trust where your support actually goes, whether it goes to us or to Ukraine, instead of having some ambiguous pot where nobody really knows where the money's going. It's just going either into the pockets of the person who runs the channel, or it's going somewhere else, and no one really knows what the actual breakdown is. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a $2 super chat and says, what's the harm of copyright without monetization?
The harm of copyright is that ads get run on the stream after it becomes a video. And interesting. Oh, wait a minute, Matthew, that was like a huge reversal. Like, what? But I would say that, one second, reread that one again.
What's the harm of copyright without monetization?
The harm is that ads get run on this stream after it becomes a video, and I don't like that because we try and keep everything ad-free and sponsor-free, and I don't like the fact that, someone can have this thing copyrighted and then run videos on it afterwards. I don't really like that much. Also, on top of that, and some people may or may not know this, but every time your videos get copyrighted on YouTube, there is the chance that a copyright owner can come and take legal action against you for playing their copyrighted material, and on YouTube, that comes in the form of a copyright strike. I know many channels out there apparently are legally illiterate and play copyrighted music, but I don't ever want to run the chance of our channel getting copyright striked because we played someone's copyrighted music, and then they get butthurt about it, and then they come and have us copyright striked. We got copyright striked twice last year, wrongfully, for something that the supposed copyright holder didn't even own. It was owned by the Ukrainian government. And I don't really want to run the risk of having that actually happen and us having no recourse to say that this person has lied on us and it's not actually their copyrighted material, because we were able to appeal both of those copyright strikes because they were wrongfully placed, and YouTube actually did remove one of them, and then for some reason said that there was credibility that the second one was also false as well, but then left it, so we still can't get our silver plaque. I think that's the reason why they did that. But I still don't want to sit there and run the risk of doing that. Also, I'm not bad-mouthing anyone in particular. It's just that we usually get a lot of crap from viewers that we mute, well, not from a lot of viewers, but a few, that we mute music just because we're scared. And in that sense, hell yeah, we're scared. Like, do you want someone suing you just to play 5 seconds of music? I wouldn't, so we just mute it all. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $50 super chat from none other than Jesus, UCSB. He made it to the chat tonight, and he says, Hola, LSA Army and Enforcers, I miss y'all, and I just recently got a big job at a big university in California. And also, congrats to you, Jesus, by the way. He says, I sent you a pic on the Twitter, and I hope you've been busy, but still looking like Zelensky, and stay strong. Jesus, UCSB.
It is Jesus UCSB. I think we've been calling him Jesus UCSB as of late again. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And Leaf Spring, along, one second. What the hell is wrong with me tonight? I'm stuttering through everything. Long live the Leaf Spring Army. And we missed you too. We didn't know where in the world you were. And a lot of people are actually calling folks out in the live chat that weren't here tonight. I have seen some of y'all show up late. I don't know if they're just sending out notifications late. That's probably the case. But still, I thank you so much once again. And congratulations on getting that job at that big university in California. I hope you have fun with that. And in response to that, I must say, we were legally obligated to say magna cum laude. And thank you so much. And thank you so much once again for sharing that huge news with us. I hope that you have a great time out there at that university. I hope you're a great professor if that's the job you got. And also, we will try and look at that pic on Twitter. Sadly, we can't show that stuff on stream because we found out it actually shows like email information and stuff like that when we go to the DMs. So I don't want to show that stuff on stream just in case if it ends up getting folks harassed for some reason or another. But still, Jesus UCSB, thank you so much once again for being a channel legend and helping this channel to keep on running. We will also make sure to stay as strong as we can. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
All right. And with that being said, we are all out of Super Chat questions. So we are moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Mark Hodges, C. Fay, JP's Gone Fishing, Cliff Simonson, Earl Bernew, and Paul Schultz. They said today's CW MSG, Bakmhut holds for now. Our eyes do not deceive us. Glory to Ukraine.
And thank you so much once again to all of y'all for deciphering the Morse code message, and y'all got it correct again. That is, in fact, the Morse code message itself. Bakmhut still holds, at least from what we can see in a small way. Our eyes do not deceive us. The video shows what's going on. So it is contested at the moment, and I thank you all so much for deciphering that Morse code message for the 451st day in a row. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one. And also, considering that we have a whole 30 minutes on a shorter stream schedule, or an hour ahead of us on a long stream schedule, we have a lot of room for live chats tonight. We might be able to get to all of them. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Bob Royst. And do you see the message?
I do, and I think that we might not be able to read that one, but I do thank you for sending that to us. We will overlook the audition, and I thank you so much for the support and enjoying this channel enough to help us to keep this thing running. If you saw it in the live chat, you saw it. If you didn't, well, unfortunate. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and back to our live chat questions. We have one from Dead Crow, who says, is Prigozhin presenting discontent with the Russian military, or is he presenting Ukraine with a false sense?
I would say that they are most likely... can you reread that question again to make sure I get it right?
Is Prigozhin presenting discontent with the Russian military, or is he presenting Ukraine with a false sense?
I would say he is expressing discontent, because what he has said is not just trying to make up a false pretense. It is also true information, like the Wagner's not really getting any ammo, things like that. Those are true statements, and so it's most likely bashing the Russian military and having a problem with them more so than it is trying to mislead the Ukrainians. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, by the way.
You're forgetting that part a lot tonight. But our next one goes to Super Action General, who says, what do you think of the German Wiesel tankette? Good, bad, meh. Also, could Ukraine benefit from their use?
I don't really like the Weasel much. It is a basic vehicle. I'll show y'all one with a tow launcher on top of it. Actually, here's all the different versions. So let's see here. Here's the one with the tow launcher, and that's about as good as it gets as far as anti-armor goes. I don't really like the idea of that. It is really... like, if you wanted something that could do the job of a Weasel, you could get something that largely could be like a go-kart or an ATV and just mount a tow on top of it, and it would be able to do about the same job. It has paper-thin armor, it has a crew of 2, so it pretty much is just a small little armored ATV. As far as that goes, the Ukrainians can already do that on their own, so I would say that it would be better to send other kinds of support to them rather than the Weasel tankette, at least in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you once again for a very interesting question, Super Action General. And we actually still have that little Zelensky you made out of the beads up there on that cabinet behind the set. We still have him there. And once we go live again, which I don't know when, he will still be up there. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, Jesus UCSB said he gives you the go-ahead to show that picture on Twitter, so it's under our likes tab if you want to show it.
Gotcha.
Peter, the Twitter's here.
And let me go to Twitter, to profile, let me go to likes. Let's see. Oh, look. Hey. It's Jesus UCSB. Hey,
it's Jesus.
It's Jesus.
Broadband for all. Wouldn't it be nice if we all had broadband?
Full fiber broadband. I'm telling you, man, it would be nice. Sadly, we'll never get it, boss. We'll never get it, boss. But still,
please, we want some fiber, and we don't want fiber one. We want fiber.
We want real fiber. We don't want that trail mix fiber. We don't want that Nature Valley fiber. We want that fiber. And also, it's really cool to see Jesus UCSB in the flesh. There he is right there. That is Jesus UCSB, a member of the Sleece Spring Army. And really cool. And so with that...
And also, seriously though, big congrats to you, Jesus, for getting that job at the university, because that is definitely going to pay off in the long run. And also, I'm sure you'll be very good at it.
And I bet he will be very good at it as well. And also, I gotta say, big congrats as well. If it's at a big university, hopefully the job pays real well. Because I know that here at UAB, I actually found out that the UAB professors got paid more than everyone thought they were right when I was graduating. Like, I remember the professor saying, we get paid like, I think it was like $80,000 a year, and I was like, what? Because I'd always been told that the UAB professors only got paid $30,000 a year, which is like below median income here in the U.S. And so I was like, oh well, it's specifically in Alabama, and I was like, man, they're getting paid nothing. And then he told me that, and he told me that that's what the that department started off at, I believe. And I was like, oh my god. I was like, wow, they get paid really well, actually. So hopefully you're getting paid more than that, especially in California, because California is expensive. And so
also got to publish those books. Got to get them published.
I'm telling you, man, when you start that class, you have to set the example. You need to have your own books written and published by yourself, and you must make them mandatory reading in that class. And the book must be $500. It's got to be. I'm just kidding with you, but still, congratulations on getting that job. And also, there was Jesus UCSB in the flesh. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And also, thank you once again for the support, Jesus. And I hope you enjoyed us showing you on the stream fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Ace203, who says, if and when Ukraine pushes the Russians out, take back Crimea, Luhansk, and Donbass, how will the future of Ukraine's stability hold with so many Russians implanted in those lands?
I would say that they probably hold up well, because the reason why the Donbass uprising occurred is because the Russian army marched in and largely supported it with their manpower, and then gave the DPR and LPR a little bit of guns to make it look like it was a kind of like a grassroots thing that came from the region. Once the Russians are pushed out, that probably will subside. They'll also probably have paperwork as well as to who was a Ukrainian citizen and not a Ukrainian citizen, and they'll probably find all of the Russians that have kind of colonized the area for the large part and send them back. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, tell me how this makes sense, because it hurts my brain. Edward in the live chat said, I just saw a casualty report. You guys need to grow up. Could somebody please tell me how that makes sense?
I don't know.
It's running my gears like they're turning against each other. There's smoke coming out of my head right now.
I don't know. What am I supposed to do? Cry? I mean, like, really? I mean, really, to be honest, tonight, I'm not really feeling it much, like, trying to, keep, really polite and stuff. And I know you've been around for a while, Edward, but we've always tried to keep this thing hype and excited, and we had some not so great news from Bakmut today, and we're trying to still keep a light attitude about the war and keep a positive outlook. Do you want me to cry or something? I mean, if you do, put in a customer complaint. I'll most likely go to the shredder, because I'm trying to keep things light. I'm trying to keep things where people have a positive outlook on the war. I'm not going to cry about stuff. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Russell Rizzo, who says, what's happening with all the Ukraine wheat that was banned by Europe?
The Ukrainian wheat that was banned by, well, not really by Europe, but more so Poland, I would say it's probably just sitting in Ukraine. It's probably being shipped to other places as well, probably at a way cheaper price than it was being sold to in Europe. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And we have a $2 super chat from Chip Kerwan, who says, can the LSA let Zelensky delay and get mega more weapons with a Z? Weapons with a Z at the end of it, to clarify that.
And also, can you reread that again?
Can LSA let Zelensky delay and get mega more weapons?
They probably could, but they probably don't want to do that as well, because breathing room is more room for the Russians to also get, I guess you could say, more prepared for in a defensive against a counteroffensive. So that would be my honest opinion on it, is that they probably should try and conduct the offensive as soon as possible, with or without weapons. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops once again, and thank you, Psyops, for the continuous support. He says, should we send X-Lax to Ukraine to help expel the shite that refuses to leave? Orcs are, in fact, crap. Super chat.
The super chat. Just in case we didn't know. But let's see, I would say...
Bull crap.
I would say, let's see, to help expel... I would say yes. I would say that would probably be a good shipment to send, so that way we can make sure to, of course, help them to get the crap out of the system, which is the Russians. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Mr. Lunchtime, who puts in $2 of his lunch money. So something is important, and thank you very much, Mr. Lunchtime. And Mr. Lunchtime congratulates Jesus. Great job.
And also, congratulations to Jesus again. It's really cool to hear that he did get that big job at that university, and hopefully it does him well. And so with that, congratulations once again to Jesus UCSB, and thank you so much once again for the support, Mr. Lunchtime, to let everyone once again hear the congratulations to Jesus UCSB. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Slava Something, Sith Lord of the LSA, who put something in. I think this is definitely Russian. And also, before I even put this in Google Translate, I'm going to place a wager. This is probably the sequel to the fooling I got the first time. And let's see if I'm right. I'm going to go put it in Google Translate. Let me get a tab open here. If I'm right, Slava Something and me are going to have to get in the cage together. But, oh, damn, he did it again. He said, I fooled you for the second time. You never learned. I did learn, actually. I did learn this time, but I'm obligated to put it in the translators. We have to know what it says. But good joke. You got me.
Wring his neck. Wring his neck. But still, thank you for the support, Slava Something. And of course, helping this channel to keep on running and getting Matthew again. He's just so gullible. I'm just kidding. He does that just to make sure it isn't a real comment. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. And for that crime, Matthew, for the high crime of fooling Matt twice, we shall have him banished from the Lee Spring Army by a wringing of the neck until he is ringed. Tell me how immature that is, I'll get back with you. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat once again from Russ Rizzo, who says, how's Sheba? My wife can't cook at all. I got the only dog who begs for Alka-Seltzer.
And
what in the world does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think did he roast his wife?
I think.
Oh my god.
And also, I would say to answer that question, Sheba is doing pretty good. Her fur is growing back out from places that it had to be taken off. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. She's doing pretty good. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Chipker One, who says, excuse me. Yeah. Oh, he says, call out the 18% voting on not doing for general for Mark.
I would call them out, but still, call them out. And you know something I'm realizing is that a few of those folks are coming over here and harassing us tonight. So I'm just wondering what's been said. And I'll let y'all know this. I'm not going to mention a specific name, because I've tried to move on from this, and we have not made a specific mention about this gooftard or whatever he is for a solid month. We have made no mention of this guy. We have completely dropped everything about him, and yet he has picked up again, harassing us and sending over his viewers to brigade against us and harass us again. And I wanted to be clear this time that we had nothing to do with that. We have not mentioned this goofy guy for a whole month, at least. Maybe even more than that. And this guy is once again out there and doing this crap again. Now, if that doesn't show y'all who is really out there harassing someone, I don't know what will, because I completely dropped it. And I've said multiple times to multiple different viewers at this point who have told us that this guy is over there and saying something in the shadows. I said, whatever, we've dropped it, we're moving on. And this guy is still out there and harassing us. I'm not going to mention this guy's name because I feel like most likely that would cause brigading on our end, which is against community guidelines. But the fact that this guy is still out there and still harassing us after we've completely dropped the guy from mention for a month is aggravating as hell. It pisses me off at this point, and honestly, it just infuriates me. It really does. And we're trying to move on. And what's funny is that this guy is like, what, 30 years old or something, I'm guessing?
Something like that.
Yeah, and we're 21, and we have the maturity to move along and just forget it. And this guy is going
22.
to keep on going. Even after, I mean, it's insane. There's really no point in going on about it. I guess this guy is insane or something. I don't know. But it's incredibly annoying to see that once again, the goofs from his channel come over and want to start messing with us when we've done absolutely nothing to the guy. Since yesterday, I think Matthew may have said one thing yesterday, but that's because he already said something about us the day before that. I didn't comment on it, just left it for what it is, and then it continues on today. I don't even know.
I try to stay above this stuff. I try to stay above.
We both
yesterday
try.
I just pulled rank. That's all I did. I didn't do anything crazy.
We both try and move on from this stuff, and we can't because this guy just keeps on harassing us and forcing it over here into this live chat. It honestly, I don't like addressing it, but that is just annoying as hell at this point. It's getting tiresome, and that's also, and apparently YouTube's finding it to be tiresome at this point as well. Because, you know, if you haven't seen with your eyes, there has been action taken against this guy, and he's not learning. He's not learning at all. We don't go out of our way to violate guideline policies to have our people go over there and brigade this guy. We've left him alone, and now he's still doing his crap. It's tiresome. But with that, we're on to the next one.
I can't help that I'm a political science major with magna cum laude and distinguished honors. I can't help that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next we have a $20 super chat from Donna Olson. And thank you very much, Donna, for the support. She says, Zelensky election anniversary on 5/20, which is today. When he ran, he said he would only serve one term. I don't see how could hold election 2024. He needs stay on out of necessity.
And I thank you so much for the support, Donna. And I'd actually say it is possible to hold an election in a war, in the Civil War, to pull an example from there, because there's actually a lot of precedent. The Civil War was kind of one of the first modern wars there was. I would say really wars from about the 1850s onwards are modern wars. So the Crimean War also falls under this as well. But the Civil War was actually a war where an election was held in 1864. The Union actually held an election once again for the president because another 4 years had passed from 1860. And so an election was held in between former General McClellan of the Union forces and Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln actually won by a landslide by I guess you could say mid-19th century margins. So it is possible to hold an election during wartime. The problem is, though, is that Zelensky did give a guarantee that he would only serve the 1 5-year term. And it is very difficult to have a leader change over the course of only about 5 years or so. Well, actually in the middle of a war at all. And that's one thing that Abraham Lincoln didn't have to worry about, because while there was no term limit at the time, it was tradition to only serve 2 terms, and he was running for his 2nd term. But it is entirely possible to run one. It's just that guarantee that Zelensky made is throwing in a bit of a wrench. Honestly, I'm someone who believes that if you come into office saying something, you have to try and follow through on it. So if the election did come around, I think it should happen, and Zelensky shouldn't run again, because that was his guarantee he made when he originally ran for president, although the situation has greatly changed. But that's really up to them, and I can understand if they did for some reason change that. I still feel like they should have an election, though, because it is part of a democracy to always have an election, no matter what the extenuating circumstances are. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And once again for your support as well, Donna, all the way from the Beverly Hills. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right. And also, did you see the super chat that just came in?
Let's see. Let me read that one real quick. I don't know what that means. I would actually ask for some clarification on that one before we read it. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, Donna, for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Danny Coco, who says 25,000 miles of trenches built in World War I. Verdun saw 40 miles, artillery shells fired, 40 million. Will we ever see this again? And great job, enforcers. LSA rocks and jaga jaga.
Also, real quick, Matthew, 1 second. Gotta undo something there. And can you reread that one again?
Also, that person was never hidden, by the way. But
yeah, I realized that when you did that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, when it there, it's like, oh, wait a minute, back that up. But reread that one again.
And Danny said 25,000 miles of trenches built in World War I. Verdun saw 40 million artillery shells fired. Will we ever see this again? And great job, enforcers.
We actually have seen that many times over. I believe there's actually a graph explaining somewhere out there ammunition amount used by war. And let me see if there is a graph that will show us the ammunition amounts used by war. Well, these are not really good pictures to get that across. And so let's see. How much ammo was needed? How much ammo was used? 41.4 billion rounds were used in the Second World War. How many rounds were used in World War One? So let's see. So in World War One, 6 million rounds a day were used. And so, let's see, it was only 8 billion in the First World War, and then compare that to the Second World War of about 41.4 billion rounds fired of just small arms munitions. And it kind of shows you how, as the world continues to industrialize and be able to produce things at a far greater number for far cheaper, the destructive power also exponentially increases as well, just from the First World War to the Second World War in small arms usage. So I would assume, going off of this, even for the Ukraine war, they are probably getting well within the realm already of the amount of small arms ammunition fired in the First World War alone. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that addresses that fairly well, at least backing it up with some figures, although we don't have a figure on the Ukraine war right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we're moving back into our live chat questions, but real quick, Enforcer, peep the Twitters. I forgot, I wanted to point out a post I made earlier today about Medvedev.
Got you.
Peter, the Twitter's here.
And so let me go to profile.
So it should be like there it is right there. It's the one about Medvedev. So I wanted to point this one out. I'm not sure if everyone got to see this one earlier. It looks like it got a lot of views. But Musk made a comment under Medvedev's tweet. It was about, I think, a year ago now. It says it right there, 10/20/22. So Medvedev responded today. It was an hour ago earlier today. He literally sat on this and waited a whole year to give his comeback to this. He was over there itching to give a comeback, but he couldn't quite do it for some reason. But he got his courage up today, and he actually responded. And look at this lame response he gave.
You've asked me about Bakmhut. Come and see for yourself. And literally like 8 months later. Man, dude, this is literally like sitting there and going, hey, how's life going? Like when you're living under a bridge and you finally make it to having a job in an apartment like 25 years later, you go, hey, look, I got everything sorted out. It's like 25 years, man.
This is very telling about Medvedev's like mental state. If he's sitting around stewing on something this minute for over a year and then finally decides to come back and do something about it, this guy's got a lot of free time on his hands.
Apparently so, and apparently they just make a list of this kind of stuff so that way they can come back and try and make a comeback to it or something. I don't know, but that is wild. He literally waited 8 months and 10 days to finally respond to this. That's lame, man. That's just sad. That shows you how sad Russians are, is that they're looking for a win anywhere, so they have to respond to an 8-month-old tweet. That, like, hell, it would have mattered if it was like a few days afterwards, but this is 8 months later. That's just sad. That's lame in every way. But that also shows you how long that battle's been going on, is that tweet was put out in October 20th of 2022, and the battle was a good ways in, like a month or two in at that point, and now it's May, almost the end of May in 2023, and the battle, at least for the city, is finally ending, but the battle for the flanks is still going on. But with that, hope we address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from the notorious GRG, who says, haters gonna hate, but you two are great. Word, and love Ukraine.
Word, and thank you so much for the support, notorious GRG. And I know that haters are going to hate, but there is a point, especially on a certain level, where hate just turns into harassment. Especially when we've dropped something, and this person, just to go back and reiterate this, said the only reason I say stuff about them is because they never stop saying stuff about me. We have completely stopped for a month. And if any of y'all have been apprised, there was a whole thing that happened over there, like the roof fell in, and then we stopped talking about them. And it's been like a month since then, a month and a week, month and 2 weeks, something like that. We've never talked about the guy an inch. It never even said anything about this person or anything. And hell, even before that, we never even said anything about them by name ever. And then we completely dropped that too. We didn't even make like a reference to them and their continuing harassment and all that. And then they pick it up again. And at this point, I don't even know what the hell to do, because, you know, supposedly the fix to this problem was to not even make slight references aimed at their direction because they continue to say crap about us. Now I can even do that, and that doesn't stop it either. So I'm about to start going back to the call them out jokes, because I'm telling you, it's not stopping. It's incredibly annoying, and I wish YouTube would take some action against that person for what they're doing, some more serious action, because apparently the first time wasn't enough to learn. And I will tell you this, we dropped it completely for a month and 2 weeks, and they are still not dropping it. You know, if that doesn't tell you what's going on, I don't know what does. And so with that, thank you for the support, Notorious GRG. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Slava Something, the Sith Lord, and took out of the LSA, I noticed. And they said, I'm banished from the LSA now, so Tempel March theme.
Ban it? Oh, wait a minute. I thought that was serious. I was like, what? I was like, no, you're not. But still, thank you for the support, Slava Something. And no, you're not banished from the LSA. It's just a joke. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you once again. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next, we have a $3 super chat from Mr. E-Man, who says, thanks to everyone for being part of the chat, and thank you for a good stream.
And thank you so much, Mr. Eamon, for the support and helping us keep this thing running. And thank you, everyone, also in the live chat for being here every single night and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And also adding a whole lot to it, because the live chat's a very interesting thing that is a part of this stream. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Mr. Eamon. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, I see what you're saying, Kaltenberg, but you know, every once in a while, we know specific names that supposedly go somewhere else and say trash about us, and then they come over here. And, you know, and I'll say this, we're not completely unapprised of apparently what's going on over there. We've been told by, I think, 3 viewers over the past day, well, actually the past 2 days, because this started yesterday again, about what this person is supposedly saying for us. And it is no coincidence that those people that we've already known have talked trash about us over there are now coming over here after that happened yesterday and starting to try and just spew crap in the chat. That is no coincidence by any means. There's no way, because it's been dropped for a month at least. And now it's starting up again. We didn't even do anything. Like, we said nothing, we've done nothing, and it's starting again. And I know that I'm kind of harping on that a lot tonight, but considering that we've had, I think, 3 people come in here that have been here multiple times before and say crap to us that is just straight up rude and derogatory, really specifically for that reason, it's annoying. It's brigading again. And we've heard that it isn't really happening directly on YouTube. It's more so happening on Discord, where all the fun always goes down. But it's freaking annoying. We don't say anything about that, you know? And also some people are like, yeah, just ignore it. It would be, and we have been ignoring it. We've been ignoring it for a month and 2 weeks, and it doesn't even change it then. Like, it's just aggravating at this point. It really is. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a live chat question from Portstan, who says, I've been talk, or I think he meant to say there's been talk suggesting that Ukrainian Patriot missiles took out the 4 planes the other day over Russia. Any insight?
We've heard that it may have been the case, but at the same time, the Ukrainians claim they didn't shoot them down, which is kind of odd, because it's crazy to think, you know, that they would sit there and shoot down 4 of their own planes. Well, the Russians would shoot down 4 of their own planes. So I think it could have been a Ukrainian Patriot system, but then again, they're not claiming them, which is weird, because if they did shoot them down, I feel like they would claim them to let the Russians know what they're capable of. Well, the Russians know either way, whether the Ukrainians claim it or not at this point. But still, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And also, I see, once again, Kohlenberg said, I don't get the animosity from the other channel when I'm there. I just tell people that, let's see, that only Russia wins with that kind of crap. I don't know either, because, you know, especially at this point, we have dropped it completely. You know, we moved on. and they're over there doing it again. Like, I don't know. And we've never even called them out by name on our channel. Never called them out, because that's a violation of community guidelines. And more so, I want the message to be directed at the person and not directed towards my audience to go over there and start harassing someone. That's the real reason why we don't sit there and call out this person by name. They've done that multiple times, though. And on top of that, they've also tried to tell people to not watch our channel. I've never said that about theirs, because I understand that people have different preferences, and we're not going to be everyone's preference. So I'm perfectly fine with people watching whatever channel. And whenever people say that in the live chat, I don't really care. It's like, yeah, you can watch that channel, just don't come over here and harass us because that person told you to come over here and harass us. That's the way it's been going the entire time, and this is nothing more than a continuation of what seems to have been going on for a year. But with that, sorry once again for everyone for bringing that up, but it's gotten incredibly annoying tonight, and I'm whether I'm up to my neck with it or not, there's really nothing we can do about it. We just have to kind of hope that YouTube notices what's going on. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Joseph M. Sika, who says, "Why can't we target these guys when they are standing out like this? U.S. Intel needs to step it up."
And also, can you reread that again? Because I just saw that someone confirmed that that this channel says either them or us. We never said that. Isn't that crazy? You know, that's the craziest thing. I don't ever sit there and try and separate pro-Ukrainians. If you want to go watch other channels, you're free to do that, whether I have a beef with them or not. But that channel's going to sit there and tell people they either can watch theirs or be gone. That's crazy. But anyways, can you reread that again?
I mean, he can say whatever he wants. I mean, if he wants to operate his channel like that, that's on him. But, you know, if people are silly enough to go with that line of thinking, they probably wouldn't have lasted long here anyway.
No.
But the question is, why can't we target these guys when they are standing out like this? U.S. Intel needs to step it up.
I would say that U.S. Intel is pretty stepped up. It's not perfect. It's not what you would see in the movies, but it is greatly stepped up compared to Russian Intel. But hopefully they can still set the mark for being one of the best intelligence agencies in the world, and hopefully do a little bit better. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Chip Kerwan, who says, "Please explain why Bakmut bummed you out today."
It didn't really bum me out, but I knew that if we said that Bakmut had, Wagner had claimed that they had taken Bakmut, considering the weight that a lot of other people had put on Bakmut, that was really undue weight to put on a city that was that strategically insignificant, it was going to bum people out. And so I was like getting ready for that before the stream. I was telling Matthew, I was like, man, expect tonight to not be a great night. You know, expect for people to be saying everything's lost in life chat. Luckily, that didn't happen. Luckily, it wasn't like absolute pandemonium because it wasn't an important city. But we were ready for it to be a really, really bad night. It didn't end up being as bad as we thought it was, especially by how everyone reacted in the live chat. But we realized for the large part that it's going to be a little bit of a bummer news, because we've been covering news about the counterattacks on the flanks for weeks at this point, nearly about 2 weeks, and that's great news. And the Prigozhin claiming that they take the entirety of the city of Bakmut, that's not really as good news as the Ukrainians conducting the sweeps on the flanks. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Chip Kerwan again. And he says, "Matt, please consider hugging little bros."
No.
Oh, goodness. You see, I'm about a year older than the Enforcer.
18
I don't
months.
I don't know if that will make a difference one day, but I don't know. I might just have a different mindset. To me, it doesn't really bother me really at all. It gets under my skin sometimes, I'll admit. But overall, I mean, the guy can say whatever he wants. If he wants to sit over there and run his channel like a goof or a clown, he can run it however he wants. It's on him. You know, I really even hate addressing it, to be honest. It's not worth addressing because the guy's not coming from an equal playing field, to put it lightly. But nonetheless, maybe a little hug would help.
I'm fine. But with that, thank you for the support, Chip Kerwan. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and back to the live chat questions. We have one from ABCD, who says, "I think I heard another YouTuber today mentioning a retreat order for Ukrainian troops from Bakmut for May 25th, and did anybody else understand the same thing?"
I haven't heard about that, unfortunately, so I'd have to declare ignorance on that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Stone Cutter, who says, "So if Ukraine puts out some bottles of vodka and moonshine, can they catch those Russians?"
Probably. I would say moonshine, maybe not. That would catch a hillbilly, but vodka will catch a gopnik for sure. They're gonna go right into the box, probably with a bottle falling on their head in the box. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Daryl Glass, who says, "Is it true that Russia kills their troops if they get injured through the Wagner escorts?"
I would say maybe. We don't really know if the Wagner is shooting at retreating Russians or not. That's one thing that's never really been clear, and we've never really gotten true proof of, rather than Prigozhin saying it. And, you know, take that for what you will. That may be an exaggeration. So we're not really sure if they're taking casualties that way or not. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Flash1, who says, "What do you think Ukraine would do to Nutsack if they captured him?"
I would say if they captured him, they probably no. I would say this: they're not going to execute him on the spot. I would say
enhanced interrogation techniques.
They're going to gently persuade him to give information, and then most likely put him on trial for the war crimes that he's committed. Unless if he makes some kind of a agreement with the Ukrainians to provide them with information voluntarily and in a massive amount of it with great fidelity, and then they may not prosecute him as a war criminal. You always have to remember that if enemy, even if they're an egregious enemy who's committed war crimes, if they say give information or give assistance to the country that they're now a prisoner of, they usually get treated quite lightly. I mean, like, look at Operation Paperclip and Werner von Braun. He ran a pretty much a factory of slave labor to produce V2 rockets during the Second World War. And then the United States took him, although he was a war criminal, and also Albert Speer as well. They let Albert Speer off the hook, who was the grand architect of Nazi Germany, let him off the hook. And then they took Werner von Braun and they just dropped him down in Huntsville and just put him into a really high up position in NASA. So if you collaborate with your captor, usually they try and treat you as best as possible. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least from what I would be seeing it to turn out like, with some historical precedent there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Robin, who says, "What are your thoughts on the F-16 restriction for Ukraine to not deploy missiles inside of Russia?"
I would say that's a pretty smart move. That's been a restriction on all of Western weaponry that's been provided so far. So it's kind of just the same rule, different vehicle, or same rule, different weapon. So I don't really think that much of it. It's been a norm all the way since the M777 was introduced into Ukrainian service. And so with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And also, I would ask, because I see this happening in the live chat just a little bit, I would ask that y'all don't share the name of the other YouTube channel around in the live chat, because I'm not wanting any indirect brigading to happen either. I don't want any brigading to happen. That message is more so meant for the clown over there at the back corner of the room, and I don't want anyone else really getting involved in it. That's really a thing in between this channel and that channel, and not really a thing in between the viewers of this channel and that channel, although they still don't get that. So with that, we are on to the next one, and I hope we addressed that fairly well, because I don't want any of that happening in the live chat.
All right, and up next, we have a $1 super chat from Danny Coco, who says, "Your parents had no cable TV just before you were born. Lol."
Well, in Alabama, that's not that much of a stretch. I would say that it's... did we have cable when we were kids, or before we were born? Did our parents have cable, Matthew? Because I think they may have at that point.
They had that public TV antenna.
Oh,
little
yeah.
thing that you had to adjust and like get the right angle and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now I remember that. And they only had like 5 channels or something like that. We almost didn't have cable. Well, at least our parents almost didn't have cable before we were born. But when we were born, I remember growing up on VHS tapes, and then some cable, but not really a lot of cable. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Underscore, who says, "Do you think that Shoigu
And the
Yes. Do you think he was present at the bunker in Mariupol that got hit yesterday? He was supposedly in the city at the time."
I don't know. If we see him again, then that will most likely mean no. And he may have even been in there and it was hit, and it just didn't get phased much by it. But considering that was supposedly a storm shadow, I have a feeling that would be unlikely because it explodes in the surface, sends the charge even further on down, and then it explodes deeper on into the target. So I would doubt that. I would say if we see him again, then he certainly wasn't there. If he disappears and then we find out that he's died, then yes, he was certainly in that bunker. So I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says, "It's a debate. Watch from the start when late, or just jump right in. You guys keep me awake while I moonlight. Slava LSA and haven't missed a Sunday."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Philip Fixes. It's good to hear that you haven't missed a single Sunday, and I love to know that because we have never missed a single Sunday either. And hopefully tomorrow we're able to blow another fundraiser through the roof and reach all of the goals for the fundraiser, well past them, like we did on the last one where we got up to 10.4 thousand. And hopefully we can do that again. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Philip. I hope that does address that fairly well. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Marcia Tucker, who says, "Why aren't we seeing or hearing about Bayraktars anymore? And is Ukraine still getting them from Turkey or producing them at home?"
We haven't heard about them getting any new Bayraktars, but we do know that they still operate them. For example, that one shot down over Kyiv is a great example of us never hearing about Bayraktars, but a Bayraktar had taken off on a mission and then was shot down afterwards by Ukrainian air defense. So there is proof that they're still operating. It's just that they've been classified state secrets, so we don't ever see the video footage anymore. But I don't know about other countries still sending them to them. We know that Lithuania bought 2 for Ukraine, and Turkey has sent several for free, and also the Ukrainians have bought several from Turkey. But we don't know about any other shipments to them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bruce Makovichuk. And I'm butchering that one, but sorry about that, Bruce. His question is, what's the commentary of the enforcer on Putin's billion-dollar, highly secured resort house on the coast of the Black Sea, which is still under construction?
It's extremely decadent. It's too decadent, really, especially for a leader who says they're in charge of a democratic country, once again showing they're a dictator. Because, I'll say this, while usually U.S. presidents end up in far better houses than they were before they were with the president, they don't end up in billion-dollar mega mansions. Like, they'll end up in, like, a $16 million house in, like, D.C. or something like that. But it is not that. Like, it's not a billion-dollar estate, pretty much like Blenheim Palace in the southern area of Russia. So I would say that Blenheim. But I would say that is over the top, way too nice, and once again shows the corruption that Russia deals with on a regular basis. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jason John, who says, if any other country helped out Russia, does that open the floodgate for other countries to join the war?
Probably not, because some countries are helping Russia. Belarus and North Korea are helping Russia, but we haven't seen anyone else really hop on the bandwagon. There's not really a lot of wealthy or capable countries that could hop on that bandwagon to help the Russians keep this thing going. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Leonce Pierre, who says, is it my imagination, or have the Russians moved away from the large trench works? In the videos from the last 3 weeks, I have seen more and more foxholes, and are the orcs actually learning something?
I think they're more so running out of an ability to dig the trenches than they're learning anything, because it appears that the foxholes are doing far worse for them than the trenches were even. And so I would say that it may be a lack of an ability to dig trenches, more so than it is their ability to learn, because we've never seen them learn, and I don't think that's ever going to change. And so with that, I hope we answered that fairly well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Joffrey Day, who says, Enforcer, if Ukraine does win this war, do you think other occupied areas like in Georgia or Chechnya will spark up again?
I would say we're probably going to see rebellions start in Georgia and Chechnya, especially if the Russians lose this war, even if it is soon that they lose the war and their military comes out of it in shambles but not completely destroyed. We'll probably see uprisings in Georgia for sure, because it's never been popular what happened in Georgia or Chechnya, and there's a lot of people down there that still resent the Russians greatly, and so it could be the case that rebellions start to happen down there. It wouldn't be out of the question whatsoever. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to the OP Squid, or Op Squid, who says, has the Ukrainian army used the U.S. tanks or the German ones yet?
I would say no, not at least for what we've seen in frontline combat footage. We haven't seen any Leopard 2s in use. We haven't seen any Abrams in use either. We have seen them on, we haven't seen the Abrams on training fields. We have seen the Leopards on training fields, but we haven't seen them on the battlefield anywhere yet. We have seen them get a little close, though, but not there yet. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person to send in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is S. Blanchard, who says, the war crimes that we've seen, were those committed by the Russian army or the Wagner army? And if so, would it be a high priority to defeat that specific group?
And can you reread that one again real quick?
The war crimes that we've seen, was that the Russian army or the Wagner army? If so, would it be a high priority to defeat that specific group?
Actually, the war crimes we've seen have been committed by everybody. They've been committed by the Chechen Kadyrovites, they've been committed by the Wagner, and they've been committed by the Russian army as well. It's really been committed by a whole myriad, really the whole Russian army. And so it's not really important to target a particular group, especially to try and find them accountable for war crimes. Really, all the groups are accountable, and so targeting them all at the same time would probably be the best thing as far as Ukraine is concerned. And so with that, I hope we answer that fairly well. And it is the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe. It makes us really happy when people subscribe. It lets us know that people enjoy what we do. And if you do enjoy it, it runs 6 days a week, every single day except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war. I thank you all so much once again for watching tonight, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the Sunday night fundraiser. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and of course, Slava Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
And Slava Ukraine, and good night.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Oh